Chapter 32:11. Xinjian Gorge recognized that the terrifying figures who had just joined the battlefield were from the same camp. Their leader was Holy Emperor Kongyu of the era of Confucianism. He was a supreme giant who had created the ancient laws of civilization and compiled the history books of the era. This person was extremely knowledgeable, and he was reputed to be one of the three emperors of the Confucian era. The etiquette and laws of Taoism written by him were regarded as the supreme law of the era of Confucianism. At this time, Holy Emperor Kongyu had led a group of terrifying existences into the battlefield, aiming at Mountain Wind and the others. Xinjian Gorge couldn't understand this. Why? These old friends of his had no quarrel with those old fools of the era of Confucianism. Senior, no one dares to occupy the 5 elements heaven pass now. You occupy it later, and I'll go save Mountain Wind and the others. Lin Sun said suddenly. You alone. Xinjian Gorge narrowed his eyes. I'm just saving people, not killing enemies. I can do it myself. Lin Sun looked calm and composed. Xinjian Gorge gritted his teeth and said, let's do it. He didn't think Lin Sun would boast about this. It's just, Fu Nanli was about to say something, but Xinjian Gorge explained patiently. My young friend Lin's idea is the wisest. As long as we occupy the 5 elements heaven pass and save Mountain Wind and the others, we can use the power of the 5 elements heaven pass to resist the enemies. At that time, no matter how many enemies there are, they have to challenge us on the Tao Steel. Such a one-on-one fight is beneficial to us. Fu Nanli narrowed his eyes and nodded in agreement. 2 seniors, I'll go first. Lin Sun took the lead. Whoosh. When his figure soared through the sky without any concealment, it immediately attracted the attention of many people. Look, it's Lin Sun. How dare he? Didn't he see how many peerless and terrifying existences there are in such a battle? Let's take this opportunity to see if he is as powerful as the rumor says. There were many spectators in the vicinity of this sea area. When they recognized Lin Sun, they couldn't help but be excited. Although Lin Sun had left an advance in the world of Life Lotus last time, his deeds had caused a sensation everywhere and caused a lot of waves. But rumors were rumors after all. Who would want to see how powerful Lin Sun was? And now, the opportunity had come. At the same time, Ying Tiansheng, Heaven Lord Zhu, and Saint Emperor Kongyu all noticed Lin Sun's presence. As expected, he really came. Ying Tiansheng sneered. This was within their expectations. The only thing that surprised them was that Lin Sun came alone. You've walked right into my trap. Let's see where you can run to this time. Killing intent surged in the depths of Heavenly Lord Zhu's eyes. Today's battle was completely a trap set up by these people to attract Lin Sun and kill him together. Is this the lotus that old man Subhoodie spoke of? Saint Emperor Kongyu's eyes flashed with an indescribable light. Lin Sun, this is a trap. Go. The expressions of Mountain Wind, Tao Lord, and the others who'd fallen into a tight encirclement turned grim, and they warned in a grim voice. Too late. Suddenly, an icy, cold voice resounded. Boom! Before Lin Sun got close, a fiery figure rushed out. He was dressed in a fiery red Taoist robe, holding a huge sword in his hand, and looked as handsome as a young man. Lu Zhongyan, a terrifying existence who had survived 6 great desolation tribulations. In the world of Life Lotus, he had besieged Sword Gorge with Jiang Yinshui and the others. As soon as Lu Zhongyan appeared, he blocked Lin Sun's way. I'm indeed a step too late. On the other side of the void, there was a sudden explosion. Then, Jiang Yinshui and a dozen other greater boundless realm existences appeared out of thin air, their faces cold and frightening. Last time, Lin Sun killed 9 greater boundless realm existences on their side, causing them to suffer heavy casualties and even lose the qualification to compete for Heaven Pass. How could they not hate Lin Sun when they saw him again? So it's a group of losers, Lin Sun laughed. This was indeed a trap. With Mountain Wind, Taoist Master, and the others as bait, on the surface, Ying Tiansheng, Heaven Lord Zhu, and Saint Emperor Kong you would attack together. but it was obvious that there were many enemies hidden in the dark. For example, Lu Zhongyin, Jiang Yinshui, and the others. This time, Sawanjin won't be able to save you in time. Along with the voice, the figure of Yellow Dragon also appeared out of thin air and walked over leisurely. Then, there was a ripple in the nearby area, and more figures appeared one after another. There were more than a dozen of them, both men and women, and their auras were extremely terrifying. But these people's faces were unfamiliar to Lin Sun. He had never seen them before, but there was no doubt that these were the enemies of Mind Mountain. At this point, the situation had completely changed. Mountain Wind, Taoist Master, and his party were heavily besieged and in a dangerous situation. Similarly, Lin Sun was also besieged and unable to escape. Moreover, from the lineup and strength of the enemies, it could be seen that no matter which camp these enemies came from, they must have secretly formed an alliance. Xingjian Gorge and Funanli were also shocked by this scene, their hands and feet cold. When a battle starts, everyone's attention will be drawn to it. Let's take the opportunity to kill our way to Heaven Pass of 5 elements. But immediately, Xingjian Gorge gritted his teeth and suppressed the impulse to go to Lin Sun's rescue, making a decision. Fu Nanli nodded his head. Is there anyone else? Lin Sun glanced at the people around him, his expression indifferent. Oh, do you think it will be like last time? Jiang Yinshui sneered coldly. As he spoke, he waved his hand. Kill! Lu Zhongyin, Yellow Dragon, and other old monsters nearby all took action. They took out their Taoist weapons and attacked Lin Sun alone. Boom, 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 boom. A full 26 greater boundless realm existences attacking together. How horrifying would that scene be? Dazzling and resplendent Dao soldiers soared through the sky and gave rise to torrents of energy that covered the heavens and the earth. Dense divine abilities surged out like a tempest, and they emanated boundless divine might. This expanse of the heavens and the earth instantly fell into a violent, chaotic, and turbulent state. All sorts of phenomena that seemed like the end of the world arose, and it revealed a scene of despair that caused one to collapse at the end of the world. People in the distance held their breath, shocked and horrified. It was too horrible. Who in the entire world of life spirits would be able to withstand such a siege? In the face of such a blow, Lin Sun stood still, and Blackwater Taoist figure rushed out. Whoosh! Blackwater Taoist figure took a deep breath and flashed away. Boom! 3,000 doppelgangers appeared in the sky, like dazzling rainbows, piercing through the sky. Each doppelganger was surging with a terrible aura comparable to that of Lin Sun in the early stage of Creation Realm. It should be noted that when Lin Sun was in the early stage of Creation Realm, he had killed Zhu Wuqian, who was comparable to a greater boundless realm cultivator. Now, that all 3,000 doppelgangers possess such power, it was like 3,000 Lin Sun in the early stage of Creation Realm going out to battle together. Such a scene could simply shock the ages and shake the various eras. The eyes of Jiang Yinshui, Lu Zhongyin, and Yellow Dragon almost popped out. They were all shocked by this scene and froze all over. Before they could react, the 3,000 doppelgangers rushed out, each of them bursting with terrible power. It was like an army of gods that could crush the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Boom, boom, the sky fell, the earth cracked, and everything collapsed. The terrifying attack power of Jiang Yinshui and the others was smashed and scattered in the void. Even the Tao soldiers shook violently and wailed. Indeed, there were more than 20 of them, and each of them was a fierce character in the greater boundless realm, especially Jiang Yinshui, Yellow Dragon, and the others who could be called giants. But at this time, they were also caught unprepared. Their formation had been scattered. Each of them was facing the siege of hundreds of doppelgangers. The scene made the spectators in the distance feel cold all over. They widened their eyes and felt stunned. Didn't they say that Lin Sun only had 5 Taoist figures? How come there were thousands of them all of a sudden? Evening Tian Shang, Zhu Tianjun, Saint Emperor Kong Yu, and the other old monsters in the distance were startled. Their expressions changed abruptly, and each of them revealed a look of disbelief. The Great Dao Clone technique was something that anyone could execute. There were illusions and reality, real and fake, and it was the most impossible to guard against. But Lin Sun's Great Path doppelgangers were different. There were 3,000 doppelgangers, and each doppelganger had the combat power of the early creation realm. One must know that Lin Sun's combat power of the early creation realm was completely incomparable to those in the same realm. He could even threaten the existence of the boundless realm. Who wouldn't be shocked? Boom! The world was in complete chaos. The fighting shook the heavens, and the rays of light surged, and the sound of Tao resounded incessantly. At this time, Lin Sun thought of something and charged towards Ying Tiansheng and the others in the distance. Behind him, there were thousands of doppelgangers of the black water body. Looking from afar, it was as if a dark curtain of night had descended. The murderous aura crushed the sky. In just an instant, the formation of Ying Tiansheng and the others was ruthlessly scattered, and they could no longer regroup. Each old monster had no choice but to deal with the doppelgangers that came charging at them one after another. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun successfully came to the side of Mountain Wind Taoist Master and the others and joined them. All of this even caught Mountain Wind Taoist Master and the others off guard. In a few blinks of an eye, Lin Sun released 3,000 doppelgangers and changed the situation of the entire battlefield. This was too unbelievable. Seniors, let's go to the 5 Elements Heaven Pass. Lin Sun quickly transmitted his voice. He didn't bother with the enemies at all, and only left the thousands of doppelgangers to fight the enemies. He took the lead and rushed towards the 5 Elements Heaven Pass. Mountain Wind Taoist Master, Xiao He, Mo Bays, Mu Changyun, Sun Daoyan, and Godlord Linglong followed him without hesitation. They were so excited that they wouldn't even frown if they were to follow Lin Sun and fight to the death. Damn it, stop them. Seeing Lin Sun and the others' actions, Ying Tiansheng and the others' faces turned livid. They were furious and wanted to stop Lin Sun and the others at all costs. But it was destined to be in vain. The densely packed doppelgangers were like a heavy tide surrounding them. How could I have a chance to stop them? Chapter 32:12. The scene was chaotic. The spectators in the distance were all stunned. Ying Tiansheng, Saint Emperor Kongyu, and Ying Tianju led the 3 camps to besiege Mountain Wind Taoist Master and the others. This was a trap laid out in the open. On the other hand, when Lin Sun appeared, Jiang Yinshui, Lu Zhongyan, Huang Long, and all the other old freaks who were scattered in the shadows attacked as well, causing Lin Sun to instantly fall into a tight encirclement like a beast that had walked into a trap. All this was enough to make anyone despair. Even the other top giants in the world of Life Lotus were doomed to be unable to escape. No one believed that Lin Sun could still be alive. But in such a situation, Lin Sun made a counterattack. With only one move, he turned the situation around and overturned the whole battlefield. All this made people feel like they were in a dream. It was incredible. Rumble, rumble, in the battlefield, the melee was still going on. Lin Sun's figures were everywhere, like a dense torrent, rushing to kill the enemies without fear of death. However, the crowd soon noticed it. Compared with the power of Lin Sun's 5 Taoist bodies, these doppelgangers were not only at the early stage of creation, but also seemed to have no intelligence, and their fighting style was not satisfactory. They were far from being comparable to Lin Sun's 5 Taoist bodies. The scene of those doppelgangers being killed and scattered could be seen at any time. But even so, these 3,000 doppelgangers still brought great trouble to the old monsters, making it impossible for them to break out of the encirclement for a while. Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Shanshui, and the others quickly calmed down and realized that their opponents were not as strong as they had imagined. At least, with their strength, they could still kill those doppelgangers one by one, even if they were besieged. Boom, boom, boom. The battle became more and more intense. Seeing that Lin Sun's doppelgangers were dying one after another, a calm voice suddenly rang in the battlefield. Come back. Suddenly, the tide-like doppelgangers of the Black Water Taoist body all turned into streaks of light and shadow and rushed towards the five elements heaven pass. Kill! Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Shanshui, and the others were not willing to give up and try to stop them. However, even though some of them were intercepted, there were still many clones of the Blackwater embodiment rushing out of the battlefield toward the celestial pass of five elements. It was also at this moment that people suddenly realized that Lin Sun and his people had already occupied the entire five elements heaven pass. What a powerful means! In this way, Lin Sun and the others don't have to worry about being besieged. Whoever wants to kill them can only challenge them one-on-one. One of the spectators was moved. Who would have thought that in such a perilous situation, Lin Sun would not only overturn and occupy the five elements heaven pass, but also rescue Mountain Wind Taoist Master and his people. Previously, we were afraid of the battle on the battlefield and worried about the hidden forces. As a result, no one dared to attack the celestial pass of five elements. Who would have thought that this would become a brilliant move by Lin Sun to resolve the situation? Someone sighed. This is what it means to be pushed to the brink of death. Although no one died in this battle, it is obvious that Lin Sun has won for the time being. The spectators couldn't help but feel a surge of emotions. Lin Sun won this battle beautifully. He turned the tide and reversed the situation. It was like a miracle, shocking and breathtaking. On the other hand, Ying Tiansheng and Jiang Yinshui was waiting for the old monsters of each camp to painstakingly set up such a fatal trap. In the end, it was like drawing water with a wicker basket, hitting a nose full of dust. If word of this got out, it would definitely cause a commotion in the world of the Life Lotus, and Ying Tiansheng and the others would become a joke. After all, it was really shameful that they couldn't do anything to Lin Sun after sending out so many terrifying big shots. This damned little thing. Ying Tiansheng and the others were livid. At this moment, the world was silent. The battle had ended. The old monsters from the various camps had gathered together. There were about 40 to 50 of them. Their strength was still terrifying. However, their hearts were filled with aggrievement and rage, and they were on the verge of exploding with rage. It was just as everyone had expected. As early as last time in the world of Life Lotus, these camps had united and decided to kill Lin Sun, Sword Gorge, and others in this time's world of Life Lotus. Because of this, as soon as they entered the world of Life Lotus, they'd taken action at the first possible moment. They'd contacted the various camps, and in the end, they'd locked onto the tracks of the Mountain Wind Dowlord and the others and set up such a trap. But who would have thought such a trap had been destroyed by Lin Sun alone? This was completely out of their expectations. If we'd known this earlier, we should have occupied the five elements heaven pass first. Saint Emperor Kong Yu sighed softly. He was dressed in a scholar's robe, his sleeves fluttering in the wind. His whole body exuded a noble spirit, making him look like a sacred teacher. Who would have thought that such an accident would happen with the strength of so many camps? Jiang Yinshui gritted his teeth, unwilling to give up. Now that Lin Sun and the others were guarding the five elements heaven pass, there was only one way to kill them: one-on-one challenge. It doesn't matter if it's an accident. In my opinion, it's not the time to give up yet. Suddenly, Ying Tiansheng said in a low voice, "As long as we win 3 life-and-death duels in a row, or 6 life-and-death duels in a row, we can seize the five elements heaven pass. At that time, Lin Sun and the others won't be able to escape." As soon as these words came out, the eyes of the old monsters present flickered. They were indeed unwilling to leave just like that. But Ying Tiansheng's proposal made them think again. Jiang Yinshui frowned. Lin Sun's combat strength can easily kill Chou Fengqi. I'm afraid that even you, Ying Tiansheng, won't be a match for him. Under such circumstances, what's the point of seizing the five elements heaven pass? He had witnessed Lin Sun's terrifying combat strength. Last time, in front of the 4 elements heaven pass in the Life Lotus world, Lin Sun had killed 9 Boundless Realm practitioners from his camp by himself. Such strength made Jiang Yinshui shudder. It seems that Taoism fellow Jiang has been frightened by Lin Sun. Ying Tiansheng laughed. But it's easy to solve this problem. We just need to fight the battle. There are so many of us. Even if we take turns to challenge them one by one, it's enough to exhaust all the strength of Lin Sun and the others. That's feasible. Yellow Dragon Immortal nodded. If we don't kill Lin Sun today, how can he not retaliate against our camps after we leave? At that time, we'll be in trouble. Everyone's heart trembled. Indeed, it was impossible for their camps to work together all the time. When it came to the Life Lotus Taoist altar, they were all competitors. Under such circumstances, if they didn't kill Lin Sun today, there would be endless troubles in the future. Then let's do it this way. Before we kill Lin Sun, we'll work together sincerely. After we kill him, we'll go our separate ways. West. Saint Emperor Kong, you made a decision. Soon, Jiang Yinshui, Lu Zhongyin, Zhu Tianjun, and the others agreed one after another. Then, they all looked at the 5 elements heaven pass in unison. Killing intent was everywhere. They're going to snatch the pass. Seeing this, the spectators in the distance were keenly aware of the intention of Tiansheng and the other camps. They couldn't help but stir up commotion. After all, they belonged to different camps. It's not easy for them to unite. If they don't take this opportunity to deal with Lin Sun now, I'm afraid they won't be able to work together again in the future. Someone's eyes were deep as he saw through the intentions of Tiansheng and the others. After all, this was the Life Lotus world. 10 days later, all camps would go to snatch the Life Lotus Taoist altar to achieve their goal of going to the ruins of Tao. This also meant that it was impossible for those camps to cooperate with each other forever. They came here to kill Lin Sun, and they were destined to be separated because of this. Doesn't this mean that Lin Sun and the others are in a dangerous situation again? That depends on whether they can survive the challenges from the other camps. It's too difficult. Lin Sun and the others can be defeated even if they take turns to fight. Unless something unexpected happens, Lin Sun and the others will not be able to escape. Many people were discussing and talking. At the same time, Lin Sun and the others were also talking above the 5 elements heaven pass, which was like an island floating in the depths of the sea. Sure enough, they're not willing to leave just like that. They're coming to challenge us. Xing Jianxia's smile froze. Previously, Lin Sun turned the situation around and rescued Mountain Wind Taoist Lord and the others. Both he and Fu Nanli were pleasantly surprised and in disbelief. Especially after they arrived at the 5 elements heaven pass, they felt relaxed. But now, Xing Jianxiao realized that the situation was not good. They must think that they have the advantage in numbers and that they will be able to overwhelm us with the continuous challenges. Then, they will seize the 5 elements heaven pass. If that happens, we will have no way out. Fu Nanli said solemnly. They were all old guys who had lived for countless years. How could they not see through each other's thoughts? Let them come. I'd like to see who will win in a one-on-one fight. Mountain Wind Taoist Lord and the others were full of killing intent. They had been besieged and injured before, but fortunately, their injuries were not serious and did not have much impact on the battle. I've never been afraid of a one-on-one fight. Sun Daoyan even looked eager. He was also angry when he was besieged before. Seniors, please take care of your injuries first. When you completely recover, you will have the opportunity to fight. Lin Sun laughed. He could see that everyone was angry. In fact, who wouldn't be angry when being besieged like that? Even Lin Sun was full of killing intent. They had just entered the world of Life Lotus, but they had already encountered such a deadly trap. It was undoubtedly proof that their enemies had planned to kill them at the first opportunity. Lin Sun let out a long breath and said, "Seniors, just follow my arrangement." An obscure and mysterious power of rule of fate covered the 5 elements heaven pass. Now, that Lin Sun was the master of this pass. He could naturally use and control the power of rule of fate. Unfortunately, there were so many limitations to this power that it could not be used to kill enemies. However, Lin Sun did not intend to place his hope of killing enemies in this heaven pass. Chapter 32:13. They're here. Xing Jiangxi's eyes were like lightning as he looked into the distance. The old monsters from various camps were coming from afar like a mighty army. Even the world of the Life Lotus, this lineup could be said to be terrifying. The gazes of the spectators in the distance also shifted towards the heavenly gate of 5 elements. The world was austere. Lin Sun's eyes were like an abyss as he glanced at the crowd. A cold smile appeared on his lips as he said, "You're not willing to retreat like this? Sure, line up and wait for your death." His words were casual and indifferent, but extremely domineering. Ying Tiansheng and Jiang Yinshui's faces darkened. Line up and wait for their death. Listen to what he said. When we get the heavenly gate of 5 elements, I'll make you repeat this again. Jiang Yinshui said coldly. Cut the crap. Who wants to fight first? Lin Sun directly declared the battle and was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. Fight to the death. Jiang Yinshui and Ying Tiansheng were stunned. Even though they had a strong lineup and a large number of people, they had never thought of fighting to the death. Lin Sun's words made their chests feel stuffy, and their faces became more and more unsightly. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh, full of disdain. I thought you had a lot of courage, but it turns out that you're just SOSO. Xing Jiangxia and the others also laughed, and their mocking voices floated in the air, making Jiang Yinshui and Ying Tiansheng feel like they were going crazy. Arrogant. He was too arrogant. I'll go and fight with this guy. Lu Zhongyin's eyes were cold. He gently waved his sleeve and hit the Battle of 5 elements tablet. Buzz! Suddenly, a rain of light rushed into the sky, intertwining and outlining in the void, and finally turned into an ancient battlefield with a cold and bloody aura. At the same time, Xing Jiangxia was full of murderous intent. Let me do it. Lin Sun shook his head and said, There's no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Senior, don't panic. There will be plenty of opportunities to fight next. This little thing actually regarded him as a chicken. Lu Zhongyin's handsome face turned green, and his eyes were full of terrifying cold light. Buzz, the next moment, he and Lin Sun's figures appeared on the battlefield, facing each other from a distance. Everyone's gazes converged on that direction. Lu Zhongyin, in terms of battle prowess, a supreme expert who had survived 6 great solitary fateless calamities, was stronger than Chou Fengqi and Demon Master Huyong. He was strong enough to compete with giants like Ying Tiansheng and Jiang Yinshui. Such a terrifying existence, even in the Life Lotus world, would be a top-level character. However, no matter if it was Ying Tiansheng's group or the spectators in the distance, none of them dared to say that Lu Zhongyin would win, because his opponent was Lin Sun. He was a terrifying figure who had killed the Harmonious Lake Demon Master when he was at the perfected creation realm. And now, he had already proven his Tao to be boundless. Who dared to forget Chou Fengqi and the other boundless realm figures who were killed by him in front of the 4 symbols heavenly pass back then? Who would dare to forget that just now, Lin Sun had single-handedly overturned the entire battle and saved the Mountain Wind Sect Master and the others? It could be said that even if Lin Sun hadn't survived the first fateless doom of Great Silence, his combat power was enough to make those magnates on the scene fear him. What? You don't agree with me when I say that you don't need a sledgehammer to kill a chicken? Then I'll show you what it means to kill chickens and monkeys later. Lin Sun said indifferently, without any trace of politeness. These words were like extraordinary humiliation, and it caused Lu Zhongyin's expression to change indeterminately. He took a deep breath and said word by word, Then I'll have to wait and see. Buzz, soon, the power of rules that suppressed the 2 of them disappeared. Almost immediately, Lu Zhongyin moved. Boom! His fiery robe fluttered in the wind, and his body surged with dazzling and brilliant light of rules. His entire body seemed to be burning, and his power rose to the peak in an instant. And in his hand, there was a giant sword. The sword was like fire, and the sword intent was boiling, emitting the power to burn the heavens. The sword was called World Incineration, and it was an incredible eternal treasure. Slash! Lu Zhongyin's figure rushed forward, and he shattered the void with a single step. The giant sword in his hand turned upside down and a torrent of flames that could destroy the world slashed down with this sword. It was as if a sea of fire had descended from the 9 heavens. Just such a blow showed how terrifying Lu Zhongyan's power was, and it amazed many old monsters outside the field. He was worthy of being an existence who had survived 6 fateless retributions. As soon as he made a move, he fused all his power into one blow, which was terrifying and boundless. Boom! The divine flame was violent and raging, and the sword chi that could burn the heavens came slashing over. But Lin Sun was seen with one hand behind his back, and the other hand suddenly swept out, as if shaking his clothes and brushing off the dust, understated. Bang! The divine flame exploded, and the sword intent collapsed. The giant sword in Lu Zhongyan's hand trembled violently, as if it was hit by a divine hammer. Under the impact of that terrifying power, the sword almost flew out of his hand. Lu Zhongyan's face was blue and white, and his rushing figure stagnated for a moment, and then he retreated fiercely. Shaking his clothes and flicking his sleeves, he repelled the enemy. This shocked all the old monsters outside the field, and their faces changed slightly. Especially Ying Tiansheng and others. They had seen Lin Sun's combat power after confirming the Boundless Realm. But now they found that the current Lin Sun was obviously much stronger than 20 years ago. Even Xinjiang Gorge, they were shocked. It was also their first time seeing Lin Sun display combat power in a one-on-one situation. Seeing Lu Zhongyan being defeated easily, a hint of shock involuntarily welled up in their hearts. The current Lin Sun was really too strong. Just this bit of means? Lin Sun's voice was casual, but the disdain and contempt in his words were not concealed at all. Lu Zhongyan's expression became solemn. He took a deep breath, put his hands together, and raised the giant sword in front of him, the sword hilt pointing fiercely at the void. Boom! A myriad of sword intents emerged, and then turned into a myriad of sword mountains, arranged in the void, densely packed, as if overlapping mountain ranges, a forest of swords in the sky. Each sword mountain responded to each other, constructing layer upon layer of nearly impenetrable barriers. The feeling that it gave people was as if one had to cross these sword mountains first to deal with Lu Zhongyan. Ying Tiansheng and the others all secretly heaved a sigh of relief. They all saw that Lu Zhongyan had changed his strategy, waiting to attack with defense. This way, he could fight for as much time as possible to deal with Lin Sun and exhaust the other party's physical strength bit by bit. Even if he was defeated in the end, he didn't have to worry about the possibility of death. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun couldn't help shaking his head. It's useless. Before his voice had died away, his figure suddenly stepped in the air and moved forward. Boom, boom, boom. Every step he took, the sky fell and the earth cracked, and the void sank, while the power of Lin Sun's body rose steadily with each step. Until he reached the Sword Mountains, his power was like that of a supreme ruler, and his figure was surrounded by the obscure and chaotic divine brilliance of rules. Lu Zhongyan held his breath, and his face changed again. Go! He shouted violently. Thousands of sword mountains rotated and floated in the air. They were like giant swords holding up the sky, chopping at Lin Sun. At this time, Lin Sun pointed out his finger. A wisp of finger force swept out, like a sharp edge that could pierce through eternity. Puff! A hole was easily pierced through the sword mountain in the front. Then puff! 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 Visible to the naked eye, the finger force shot straight through thousands of sword mountains like piercing a thin piece of paper. It was too fast, like a hot knife through butter. It came to Lu Zhongyan in the blink of an eye. At this critical moment, a fiery red copper mirror that looked like it was made of divine gold appeared in front of Lu Zhongyan out of thin air. Bang! A deafening explosion resounded. Although the fiery red copper mirror blocked the finger force, dense cracks like a spider web appeared, and then it exploded with a bang. Lu Zhongyan coughed up blood, and a touch of horror appeared on his face. How tyrannical was the defensive finger force of the Thousand Mountain Sword momentum, but it was broken by a finger, and his Crimson Dao shield was directly shattered on the spot. This crushing power made an old monster like Lu Zhongyin feel a chill down his spine, and he deeply realized the terror of Lin Sun. He even regretted being the first to stand up and challenge Lin Sun before. Is there any difference between you and a chicken now? Lin Sun stepped forward, his eyes cold. In words, he regarded a top figure of the boundless realm as a beast, which was undoubtedly the greatest contempt and trampling. It made those old guys outside the field feel depressed, and their faces were ugly. But Lu Zhongyin didn't care about this. Seeing Lin Sun coming, his figure flickered, trying to fight in a roundabout way and not fight with Lin Sun head-on. If it was in the outside world, this tactic could of course be played to the extreme. But this was a battlefield. No matter how big it was, there was a limit after all, so Lu Zhongyin's movement was also greatly limited. But how could Lin Sun give him a chance to dodge and wander? Boom! He waved his sleeve, and a vast sword rain fell from the sky, covering the void and whistling. Clang! 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 Lu Zhongyin waved his sword to resist, but the dense sword domain made his figure stagger back. His blood and chi were tumbling, and he was in a difficult situation. He had tried his best, but he still looked very weak. Swish! Lu Zhongyin was just about to dodge when he saw the rain of swords raining down on him, but a large hand had already grabbed him from the sky. With an unstoppable force, the might of his entire body was shaken to the point of dispersing, and it easily grabbed his neck. Bang! Lu Zhongyin's Dao body exploded, and before the bloody flesh and blood scattered, it was refined into a pure and surging eternal source power by the rule power that emerged between Lin Sun's palms and fingers. This was naturally the mystery of the 5 sequences of the Ruins of End. Now that it was integrated into the Nirvana profound meaning, Lin Sun could release its power with just a thought. No! Lu Zhongyin's primordial spirit shouted, and finally showed a look of fear. A boundless realm Dao body was completely refined. The loss was so heavy that even if he wanted to recover in the future, it would take countless years. If this is not a battlefield of life and death, can you still shout? As Lin Sun spoke, his palm and fingers exerted force again. Lu Zhongyin's primordial spirit was in severe pain, as if it was pierced by thousands of swords, and his consciousness was blurred. At this moment, the rule power of the battlefield of victory and defeat emerged, forcibly taking away Lu Zhongyin's primordial spirit at this moment of life and death. Lin Sun had long been used to it, so he was not surprised. He picked up the giant sword left by Lu Zhongyin, and then his figure disappeared out of thin air on the battlefield of victory and defeat. Looking at the battlefield again, everyone was shocked. Chapter 32:14. Lu Zhongyin was defeated. It was a complete mess. From beginning to end, it only took a moment for his Taoist body to be destroyed and his spirit to be severely injured. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow to the old monsters present. After all, Lu Zhongyin's strength was already top-notch, and he could compete with Ng Tiansheng and Jiang Yanshui. But now, even he was defeated so quickly. Whoever wanted to challenge Lin Sun had to seriously consider the consequences. The atmosphere was very gloomy. Ng Tiansheng, Jiang Yanshui, and the others looked gloomy and had different thoughts. On the other hand, the people in the Sword Gorge were beaming with joy. Lin Sun's victory was too easy. He defeated Lu Zhongyin in one fell swoop. This also meant that even if the opponent wanted to exhaust Lin Sun's strength, the hope of success was not great. The spectators in the distance were also overwhelmed with emotions. At this moment, their understanding of Lin Sun rose again, and they regarded him as a real existence comparable to Ng Tiansheng, Jiang Yanshui, and Saint Emperor Kongyu. Continue. Seeing the gloomy atmosphere, Lin Sun said indifferently. Jiang Yanshui and the others looked at each other and hesitated. Let me do it. Next to Yellow Dragon, a skinny man walked out. His skin was pale golden, his hair was scraggly, and his aura was heavy. When they saw him appear, many people felt much more relaxed. Regent Lord Qingtu, an old monster who had passed through 6 great silence tribulations and walked on the road of physical Tao. It was said that when he reached the boundless realm, the power contained in a drop of his blood could crush a big sister's rule power. He could be called abnormal. If such a big shot were to take action, just the immortal and indestructible physical strength alone would be enough to give him a great advantage in a fight. At the same time, Sun Daoyan suddenly told Lin Sun about the origin of Regent Lord Qingtu and reminded him, a long time ago, Regent Lord Qingtu's senior brother died in a fight with your master. This is also the reason why Regent Lord Qingtu hates you so much. Lin Sun's eyes were filled with a hint of understanding. Actually, this was the first time Lin Sun had seen many of the enemies in the distance. Their appearances were very unfamiliar, but he could roughly determine that they were enemies of Mount Innerheart. Divine Lord Ling Long spoke softly. Your master once sent a group of good friends to the ruins of myriad Daos in the Ocean of Destiny. But because of this, he offended many opponents in every battle of the Grand Dao. So, when you appeared, you became their target of revenge. Lin Sun nodded. Why were there so many enemies and so few friends who hated Fongsun Mountain? It was too simple. Because the Master of the Core had sent all his good friends to the ruins of Dao all those years ago. So, most of those that remained were defeated by him. And now, these defeated foes had their eyes on him, the successor of the Master of the Heart Core. Understanding this, Lin Sun's eyes were a little strange. If I send all my good friends to the ruins of Dao during the struggle for the Grand Dao in this era, then how many of my defeated enemies would hate me? Because of this, before Lin Sun could think more, Regent Lord Qingtu had already appeared on the Victory and Defeat Dojo. As the power of rules suppressing Lin Sun and Regent Master Qingtu dissipated, the duel broke out. Dong! Regent Lord Qingtu sat cross-legged and waved his hand to take out a purple rui. He gently knocked on the ground, and a deafening sound rang out. Then, layers of purple stone steps spread out under him. Suddenly, the figure of Regent Lord Qingtu continued to rise, and the number of purple stone steps he sat on continued to spread down. In the blink of an eye, there were 99 steps. Every step seemed to be polished from divine jade and was branded with mysterious totem rules. There were gods and demons in the sky, the sun and the moon hanging high, the boundless Zhou Su, the dense network of latitude and longitude, and layers of stone steps seemed to be formed by layers of mysterious and unpredictable rules. When looking up from the bottom of the stone steps, it seemed to be as far as the 99 levels of heaven. And sitting cross-legged at the highest place, Regent Lord Qingtu was like a god above the 99 levels of heaven, overlooking the heavens supreme. That scene was too incredible. As soon as it appeared, it attracted the attention of all the people present, and many old monsters showed a look of shock. The heaven rank of the Great Way. This was the embodiment of Regent Lord Qingtu's cultivation, which integrated his wisdom, effort, and strength. Fighting against it was like being separated by 99 levels of heaven. Ordinary opponents couldn't get close at all. If they tried to break in by force, they would be bombarded by the power of rules distributed on each level of the heavenly steps. It could be said that the Grand Way of Heaven rank was the most powerful supernatural power of Regent Lord Qingtu. Now, he used it at the first time. It could be seen that he also regarded Lin Sun as his #1 enemy. Fortunately, Regent Lord Qingtu proved his Tao with his body. Now he can fight with the Grand Way of Heaven rank, which is enough to make Lin Sun unable to win for a while. Yellow Dragon said leisurely. The old monsters nearby also felt more relaxed. Lu Zhongyan's crushing defeat had hit them too hard. Now, with Regent Lord Qingtu's help, they were cheered up again. The older you live, the more despicable you are. Witnessing this scene, they couldn't help but curse in their hearts. It was obvious that Regent Lord Qingtu intended to waste time with Lin Sun. On the battlefield, Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and then sneered. Old guy, do you think you can hold on longer like this? On the Grand Way of Heaven rank, Regent Lord Qingtu held the purple rui in his hand and said calmly, If you can win, just come at me. His words were light, but he showed absolute confidence. Lin Sun nodded, As you wish. He stepped forward, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He was as transcendent as an immortal. Boom! When Lin Sun approached, a totem of demons suddenly appeared on the first purple step. The purple light was blazing, and tens of thousands of phantoms of demons suddenly emerged, as if they had come out of the dark demon domain. They roared and rushed at Lin Sun. That terrifying scene caused many people to gasp in astonishment. But Lin Sun didn't dodge. He raised his hand and swept across the void. Swish! A sword chi full of nirvana swept out. It was thousands of meters long and tore the void, emitting an invincible and unstoppable spirit. Puff! The tens of thousands of phantoms of demons were swept away by the sword and turned into light all over the sky. Then, Lin Sun stepped on the first purple stone step. But as soon as he steadied himself, an expanse of a golden ocean of flames surged out from the second layer of the stone steps, and it was like a torrent that rumbled and roared as it charged out. Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! The golden sea of fire, which was powerful enough to burn the sky and destroy the earth, was directly split open, and the flame wave collapsed, splitting the sea with one sleeve. His casual gesture made those old monsters outside the field slightly change their expressions. They could do the same, but it was impossible for them to do it as easily and casually as Lin Sun. Boom! Before the crowd could react, countless torrents of white saber chi emerged on the third purple stone step, and the overbearing and unparalleled destructive breath also spread. Lin Sun didn't look at it and pressed out his palm. Bang! The countless white saber chi paused at first, as if they were caught by an invisible hand, and then burst together at the same time and disappeared without a trace. On the fourth purple stone step, dazzling destructive thunder emerged. But in an instant, Lin Sun opened his mouth and swallowed all of them. In this way, Lin Sun stepped up step by step. Every time a killing tribulation emerged from the purple stone step, it would be easily defeated by him. People could see that the higher the stone step, the more terrible the power released, but all this seemed to pose no threat to Lin Sun. In a few blinks of an eye, he had reached the 36th step, although there was still a long distance between him and Region Lord Qingtu on the 99th step. Such a speed still made people outside the field nervous. However, Region Lord Qingtu looked calm and gently knocked the purple rui in his hand on the ground. Boom! Behind Lin Sun, the layers of stone steps suddenly disappeared. In front of Lin Sun, there were another 35 steps. All of a sudden, the 36th step he was standing on became the first step. This strange change stunned the people in Sword Gorge. Could it be like this? Ying Tiansheng and the other camps were boiling with excitement. What a heaven step! In this way, unless Region Lord Qingtu's power is exhausted, Lin Sun can't get close to it. People were talking with a hint of joy on their faces. But at this time, Lin Sun suddenly took a step back and left the heaven step of the Great Way. He said, I originally want to try to find out what mysteries are hidden in the heaven step of the Great Way, but now it seems that it is nothing more than a defensive magic like a turtle shell. He looked calm and seemed a little disappointed. Region Lord Qingtu looked neither sad nor happy. He said, in my opinion, as long as you can be invincible in the battle, it is the strongest magic in the world. After a pause, he looked down at Lin Sun under the 99th step. At least now, Taoist Lin seems to be a loss. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and laughed. Within 3 punches, I will break your turtle shell. As he spoke, his sleeves fluttered and he punched out. It was an understatement, invisible, colorless, and formless punch, without any power overflowing. But when this punch was punched out, bang, 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 the layers of purple stone steps exploded from small to top, like lit firecrackers, bursting into purple smoke and light rain. Before the power of this punch was exhausted, Lin Sun punched out again. Boom! This punch was more overbearing and powerful than before. The rest of the heaven step shook violently, and many cracks appeared like a spider web. Sitting cross-legged, Region Lord Qingtu's face changed slightly. He took a deep breath and knocked the purple rui in his hand on the ground. Dong! The surging power of rules emerged, and the layers of purple stone steps that had been destroyed began to condense and spread again, as if the dead had been resurrected. At this time, Lin Sun punched for the third time. This punch was like the formless chaos, the immeasurable abyss, and a nameless great way. This punch contained the might of the rebirth profundity. And when this punch was punched out, boom! The nomological energy that covered the 99 levels of the purple stone steps was completely suppressed, destroyed, and crushed into nothingness. Moreover, this heaven rank of the Grand Tao that could be said to be the most powerful divine ability of Region Lord Chung Tu also exploded in an instant. It was completely smashed by a punch. Chapter 32:15. With 3 punches, Lin Sun broke the supreme heaven rank of the Great Path. This shocked all the people outside the field. Before, Ying Tiansheng and others thought that with the heaven rank of the Great Path, it was enough to make Region Lord Qingtu invincible. Who could have thought that with just 3 punches, the heaven rank of the Great Path was destroyed? Especially Lin Sun's last punch. The unparalleled power made all the old monsters standing outside the field breathless and felt a strong sense of danger. Boom! The rain of light splashed all over the sky. Region Lord Qingtu, who was sitting cross-legged, was caught off guard. He was shaken and staggered. Then, a trace of blood dripped from his lips. A wisp of shock that was difficult to restrain appeared on his face. The heaven rank of the Great Path was his most powerful skill. In the past battles for the Great Path, he had been invincible many times with this skill. Even if he encountered a fatal danger, it was enough to save him. But now, it was easily destroyed by Lin Sun. How could Region Lord Qingtu still calm down? My young friend Lin's combat power is indeed unparalleled, but I will not admit defeat. He took a deep breath, holding the purple rui in his hand, and rushed over. Although the heaven rank of the Great Path was useless, his body was still unparalleled, so he was not afraid to fight with Lin Sun. Even if he couldn't win, he had to consume as much of his cultivation as possible. Buzz! The violet rui scepter smashed out. Dragons and tigers collided as violet energy rose from the east, and a gorgeous rain of light descended like a waterfall and gave rise to a torrent of destruction that was boundless like mist. Do you really think that there is no price to pay for the victory? If you don't admit defeat, I will kill you until you do. Lin Sun looked indifferent and rushed forward to kill. Suddenly, a fierce battle broke out between the two, so that the battlefield was completely filled with dazzling torrents of rules, sweeping and tumbling, turbulent and chaotic. In a moment, the two fought hundreds of times. Every time, Region Lord Qingtu's attack was easily defeated by Lin Sun, which made his chi and blood tumble, making him embarrassed. This scene caused the expressions of many old monsters to change. But people had to admit that Region Lord Qingtu's Taoist body was extremely powerful. Even if he suffered such a blow, he could still fight tenaciously, and his injuries were not serious. The most incredible thing was that every time Region Lord Qingtu was injured, he would recover in an instant with a flash of blood chi on his body. This made Lin Sun frown slightly. Proving one's Tao with a fleshly body was so heaven-defying. I can't get entangled with this old guy. Otherwise, the longer the battle goes on, the more energy I'll consume. Lin Sun thought to himself. Boom! In the next moment, he activated the abyssal sword cauldron and attacked with all his might. The situation on the battlefield had also changed. Before, Region Lord Qingtu was at a disadvantage in the head-on collision. Although he could withstand Lin Sun's constant bombardment, he was also constantly injured. As Lin Sun drove the abyssal sword cauldron to attack, the situation of Region Lord Qingtu suddenly became extremely dangerous. Crack! In the blink of an eye, the purple scepter in Region Lord Qingtu's hand shattered. It had actually been smashed by the abyssal sword cauldron. Under the impact, Region Lord Qingtu suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his countenance turned pale. But before he could stabilize his body, whoosh! A Tao sword flew out of the sword cauldron and flashed in the void. Blood splattered everywhere. Domain Lord Chengtu's body was split in half. That scene caused a burst of exclamations outside the battlefield. But immediately, people saw that with a burst of blood and qi, the body of Regent Lord Chengtu was restored to its original state. But his face became paler. This incredible scene made all the people in the sword-traversing gorge feel shocked. I'd like to see how many more times you can hold on. The killing intent in Lin Sun's eyes became more and more blazing. This Regent Lord Chengtu was so difficult to deal with that he seemed to be unkillable. However, Lin Sun also noticed that with the continuous injuries, the power of Regent Lord Chengtu was obviously consumed rapidly, and he was about to be unable to hold on. Boom! Lin Sun attacked again. His attacks were like a storm. The abyssal sword cauldron roared constantly and kept pressing down. Regent Lord Chengtu tried his best to resist, but his injuries were getting worse and worse. His Taoist body was smashed dozens of times. Although he recovered every time, everyone could see that he was in a bad situation. Tut! When the body of Regent Lord Chengtu was smashed again, Lin Sun suddenly reached out his hand. Boom! A huge abyss appeared like a whirlpool. Before Regent Lord Chengtu could react, his broken Taoist body was swallowed up by the abyss. The power of the abyss was full of the 5 sequences of the ruins of End, and it was constantly refining it. Damn it! At this moment, the spirit of Regent Lord Chengtu changed completely. He proved his Tao with his body, and all his Tao was integrated into his body. If his body was completely destroyed, it would be no different from killing him. Seeing that most of his body was refined, Regent Lord Chengtu did something that horrified all the people present. He destroyed his own spirit. This was no different from suicide, but on this battlefield, it produced an inconceivable effect. Buzz! In an instant, the power of rules emerged and forcibly took away the Taoist body and spirit of Regent Lord Chengtu, which were being refined. Lin Sun was caught off guard. Was he trying to save the lost by committing suicide? Could it be done? Soon, Lin Sun's figure was also moved out and returned to 5 Elements Heaven Pass. The atmosphere in the field also became strangely dull. Regent Lord Chengtu was defeated. However, he ended the battle by committing suicide. The feeling this gave others was undoubtedly too absurd and strange. Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Shanshui, and other old monsters were all stunned. They had participated in so many battles in the world of Life Lotus and had seen countless decisive battles. But it was the first time for them to see someone take the initiative to commit suicide to seek defeat. If this got out, they would become a laughingstock of the whole world. Looking at Regent Lord Chengtu, he was also uncertain of the moment. He was seriously injured. The power of his Taoist body had been refined by Lin Sun by 30%, which was equivalent to a serious injury to the foundation of his Tao. Compared with this, the humiliation in his heart was the most uncomfortable for Regent Lord Chengtu's day. What could he do? In the situation at that time, this was the only way he could use the power of rules to save his Taoist body. Otherwise, he was bound to end up like Lu Zhongyan from before, his flesh and blood completely refined. What a disgrace. Ha ha! The amazing feat of committing suicide to seek defeat will be carried forward by you, Regent Lord Chengtu's day. In the future, when we talk about this matter, you're absolutely worthy of being the first person to open up this Tao. Your name will be passed down from generation to generation. In the 5 Elements Celestial Pass, in the Sword Gorge, they did not hide their ridicule. Looking at Regent Lord Chengtu, his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He gritted his teeth, crushed the life pearl of Tao, and left the world of Life Lotus. Obviously, the taste of extraordinary shame made him unable to stay any longer. Jiang Shanshui and Ying Tiansheng looked at each other with gloomy faces. After Lu Zhongyan, Regent Lord Chengtu was also defeated. All this also let them see with their own eyes the terrible fighting power of Lin Sun. Even people like Ying Tiansheng and Jiang Shanshui no longer had the confidence to defeat Lin Sun. This undoubtedly cast a shadow over all their camps. But they also realized that after this battle, Lin Sun must have consumed a lot of his strength. If they did not hurry to challenge Lin Sun, the prize paid by Region Lord Chung Tu would be in vain when Lin Sun recovered. What should they do? Should they fight or not? The atmosphere in the field was depressing. This made people feel very aggrieved. There were 40 or 50 old monsters in all camps. How magnificent the lineup was. But now, they were in a dilemma and could not back down. If the news spread out, they would also lose face. More importantly, if they gave up and retreated, there would be endless troubles in the future. It's only been 2 battles. Do you all admit defeat? Lin Sun broke the silence in the field. We have been going against the heaven. When have we ever been afraid of life and death? Suddenly, an old man in linen walked out of the camp of Lord of Heaven, Zhu angrily and righteously. Let me do it. Everyone couldn't help but be moved. Well, from now on, each of our camps will take turns to challenge Lin Sun. No matter who wins or loses, we can't retreat or hesitate. Lord of Heaven, Zhu said in a low voice. Yes. Ying Tianxing nodded in agreement. Then, Jiang Shanshui, Yellow Dragon, Saint Emperor Kong Yu, and other camps also agreed. Indecisiveness would only lead to chaos. Since they were in a dilemma, they should try their best to win this game. After making this decision, the old monsters present calmed down and looked resolute. The atmosphere in the field also changed accordingly. Lin Sun frowned slightly. He also saw that the old guys of all camps had thrown caution to the wind and were going to fight at all costs. Xingjin Gorge and Fu Nanli were also awestruck, realizing that there might be fierce battles in the next few days. Lin Sun, since it's the final battle, you can't be stubborn. We can fight on your behalf, and you can take advantage of this opportunity to recover. Xingjin Gorge transmitted his voice to Lin Sun. Lin Sun nodded. I'm very pleased that all of you are of one mind. At this time, the old man in linen walked out and said with relief. He didn't expect that his act of righteous indignation had prompted all camps to make such a decision. Then, he went straight forward and knocked on the Tao Stone tablet of victory and defeat. You just said that you were never afraid of life and death. I thought you were going to have a life and death duel. On the battlefield, Lin Sun sneered. In the distance, the old man in linen snorted coldly. Young man, it's useless to provoke me. You can be arrogant now, but when you die, I'd like to see if you can still be arrogant. Lin Sun smiled slightly. Lu Zhongyin's Taoist body was destroyed, and his spirit was seriously injured. Qing Tu, the first in history, chose to commit suicide. What about you? Which end do you want? You, when the old man in linen was about to say something, the power of rule suppressing him, and Lin Sun had disappeared. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun moved. Swish! Like a flowing light tearing the shackles of time and space, he was incredibly fast. The old man in linen's face changed greatly, and he did not hesitate to use all his strength to fight back. Boom! With an earth-shattering collision, the old man in linen was smashed with a slap, and his spirit was firmly grasped in Lin Sun's hand. One strike to suppress the enemy. Chapter 32:16. The old man in sackcloth had gone through 5 great silence fatality tribulations. Even though he was slightly weaker than Hu Yong Demon Lord, there was not much difference between them. Of course, he couldn't be compared with the top figures like Lu Zhongyin and Qing Tu. Therefore, people had long believed that he would lose this battle. It all depended on how long he could hold on and how much of Lin Sun's strength he could consume. But no one had expected that the old man in sackcloth would be defeated in just one blow. It was so fast that people couldn't believe it. On the Avalon of 5 elements, people in the sword-traversing gorge were also stunned and then burst into laughter. This old guy was so righteous and generous before, but now, he was just too pathetic. How do you feel? Asked Lin Sun. The spirit of the old man in sackcloth in Lin Sun's hand seemed to be in a daze. After a while, he said in a hoarse voice, I told you. You will be killed eventually. So what if I'm defeated by you? Good. Lord of Heaven, Zhu couldn't help but cheer for him. The other old monsters present also nodded secretly. This was what it meant to lose in battle, but not in spirit. but your foundation of Tao will suffer irreparable damage. Lin Sun said. His words caused the expression of the old man in sackcloth to change, and he couldn't help but recall the scene of Regent Lord Chung Tu committing suicide to seek defeat. And you won't have time to kill yourself. Lin Sun's words made the old man's spirit feel like it was going to collapse. Bang! The next moment, a terrible power burst out from Lin Sun's palm and pierced into the old man's spirit like a sharp sword. Just as the old man's spirit was about to explode, the familiar power of rules emerged and saved him. The battle was over. However, Jiang Shanshui and the others didn't look good. The old man in sackcloth was defeated too quickly and consumed little of Lin Sun's strength. On the contrary, the old man in sackcloth had damaged his foundation of Tao. The price he had to pay was too high. Jiang Shanshui, it's your turn. Lord of Heaven Zhu reminded. Jiang Mingshui snorted. No need to remind me. He glanced at the people around him. The old monsters' faces stiffened. If possible, they certainly didn't want to fight with Lin Sun. Old Guan, you go, Jiang Mingshui said. The one who was called was a burly man. His lips twitched, but he still bit the bullet and agreed. Buzz. Soon, the battlefield appeared again. It was still Lin Sun who took the challenge. A great battle erupted, and the burly man, who was no less powerful than Hu Yong, was defeated by Lin Sun in mere moments. There was no suspense in the process. What was truly surprising was that when the burly man was defeated in the end, he chose to commit suicide, just like Regent Lord Chung Tu. This naturally caused the people in the Travel Sword Gorge to roar with laughter. Although Jiang Yinshui, Ying Tiansheng, and the others had ugly expressions on their faces, they had to admit that this method of seeking defeat by suicide was better than having their foundations damaged by Lin Sun. Saint Emperor Kongyu, it's your turn. Jiang Yinshui spoke. Brother Wanan, I'll leave this battle to you. Saint Emperor Kong, you looked at a yellow-robed man. This person was called Wanan, a top figure that had overcome 6 lifeless tribulations, and his combat strength was sufficient to compare with Lu Zhongyin from before. But as soon as he appeared, he was still defeated by Lin Sun. Moreover, Junin was even more decisive. Seeing that his body was about to be destroyed, the first thing he did was to commit suicide to seek defeat. Previously, people had thought that this method was shameful. But now the old monsters present seemed to have gradually accepted all this. Ying Tiansheng, it's your turn. In the following time, old monsters appeared one after another. Whether they were willing or not, the moment they set foot on the battlefield, they all attacked with all their might, as if they were desperate. Since it was all the same, why not fight with all their might? And it was always Lin Sun who accepted the challenge. And it was Lin Sun who won every time. The funniest thing was that every old monster who had been defeated unanimously chose to leave the battlefield as soon as they could by committing suicide to seek defeat. All of this was like a heavy blow accumulating, making the faces of Jiang Yinshui, Ying Tiansheng, and the others extremely gloomy. They were even a little anxious, because the battle had lasted until now. Logically speaking, Lin Sun should have consumed a great deal of his physical strength. But Lin Sun had always been very strong and had never shown any signs of weakness. In addition, Travel Sword Gorge, Fu Nanli, and the others had not yet appeared. This also meant that even if Lin Sun consumed a great deal of energy, he could let others take his place to fight. How could Jiang Yinshui and the others not be anxious? Far away, as time went by, the number of spectators also increased. Many old monsters came after hearing the news. Among them, there was no lack of people who hated Lin Sun. But when they witnessed what happened in front of the 5 Elements Heaven Pass, their hearts were extremely heavy. How could they step forward rashly? Even if they stepped forward, they were destined to line up like Ying Tiansheng and the others to fight one after another. It would be fine if there was a chance to win. But the point was that such an opportunity had not appeared yet. Ying Tiansheng and the others had gathered so many strong practitioners for various camps. But until now, no one was a match for Lin Sun. Of course, people could also see that Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, and the other giants had not taken action yet. But even they had not taken action, How could those old guys who had just arrived be stupid enough to take the initiative? Lin Sun is too strong. Many people were shocked by this. In my opinion, if Lin Sun was in his peak state, I'm afraid that even giants like Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, Yellow Dragon, and Saint Emperor Kong, you would not be a match for him. Someone analyzed calmly and came to a chilling fact. That was Lin Sun, who had just reached the boundless realm, already had the ability to threaten those giants. And in this world of Life Lotus, there were only a dozen people who could have such power. Su Wanjun, Du Feng from the Buddha era, Wang Xinghai from the Witch era, and so on. If Lin Sun doesn't die this time, those who regard Feng Xiyuan as their enemy will suffer in the future, someone murmured. Boom! In front of the 5 elements heaven pass, another old monster was defeated on the battlefield of victory and defeat, committing suicide to seek defeat. This was the 17th person defeated by Lin Sun. In the past years, there had never been such a shocking battle of attrition. All the old monsters who had shaken the world for many years were defeated one after another, and the one who defeated them was a young man who had just reached the boundless realm. All of this was a heavy blow to Jiang Yinshui, Tiansheng, and the others. However, it was also at this time that Yellow Dragon stepped forward and said calmly, "This boy is too arrogant. Let me take him down a peg." He was dressed in a green robe and carried an ancient sword with pine patterns on his back. "Then I'll have to trouble you, brother." Jiang Yinshui breathed a sigh of relief, and the other old monsters also seemed to relax. Yellow Dragon was a terrifying expert who had traversed the Sea of Destiny for 9 epochs. In terms of seniority and foundation, he was a little stronger than Jiang Yinshui and Tiansheng. Moreover, Jiang Yinshui and Tiansheng had already deduced that Lin Sun had consumed a great deal of energy in these 17 battles. Even if he wasn't at the end of his rope yet, as long as a titan like Yellow Dragon took action, he would definitely gain an enormous advantage in battle. After all, one was at his peak while the other had already experienced many battles. It was destined that they would never be at their peak again. Xinjian Gorge and the others were slightly taken aback by this sight. "Let me do it." Sun Daoyan was the first to speak. "Young friend Lin, rest well. I can do the same," God Lord Linglong said. Among them, Xinjian Gorge and Fu Nanli were on par with Demon Lord Huyong, but they were slightly weaker than true Sovereign Yellow Dragon. But Sun Daoyan and God Lord Linglong were different. They could stand shoulder to shoulder with Tiansheng and Jiang Yinshui, and they were only a little weaker than Yellow Dragon. Moreover, this was a battle that would decide the victor. Even if they lost, it didn't matter. "Sun Daoyan, if you dare to attack, we will definitely exterminate you in the future," Tiansheng coldly said. "Don't forget that you and God Lord Linglong are all alone. If you insist on following Lin Sun to the end, only death will await you." Jiang Yinshui and Zhu Tianjun also threatened. No one wanted true Monarch Yellow Dragon's opponent to be someone else. Sun Daoyan sneered, "If I feared threats, how could I have gotten involved in this storm? They're acting like this because they're worried that we'll appear and give young friend Lin time to recover." God Lord Linglong coldly said, "Lin Sun, do you dare to fight me?" Yellow Dragon directly looked at Lin Sun in provocation. This was the simplest method of goading. In everyone's opinion, Lin Sun wouldn't fall for it. But Lin Sun smiled and nodded. "All right, I'm waiting for a big fish like you." Everyone was startled and caught off guard. Even true Lord Yellow Dragon himself was surprised. This kid actually agreed so easily? "Young friend Lin, don't force yourself. Although this is only a battle to decide the victor, the Avalon of 5 elements won't be able to hold on if you're seriously injured." Sun Daoyan's expression was solemn. The others also tried to dissuade him. Lin Sun transmitted, "Seniors, don't worry. Those were just appetizers. Now that we've finally caught a big fish, how can we let him escape?" Everyone in the traversing Sword Gorge was stunned. Lin Sun had been waiting for this opportunity? "Are you sure?" Yellow Dragon couldn't help but ask. He suspected that Lin Sun was cheating. "If I didn't let you take advantage of me, I'm afraid you wouldn't have made a move." Since that's the case, why should I change my mind? Lin Sun said with a serious expression. For me, dealing with an old thing like you is the most interesting thing. Those guys from before are really not worth my time. Lin Sun's words were extremely domineering, and he even humiliated those old fellows who had been defeated by him previously. However, Yellow Dragon relaxed and said, with your courage, I'll make you accept your defeat wholeheartedly in the duel later. Lin Sun sneered, as long as you don't commit suicide to seek defeat then. True Monarch Yellow Dragon couldn't help but laugh out of rage at these words. I'm not an opportunistic person, and I definitely wouldn't do such a disgraceful thing. His words were sonorous and forceful, powerful and resounding. But those old fellows who had committed suicide to seek defeat by Lin Sun all had ugly expressions on their faces. What was opportunistic and what was shameful? Who were you scolding, Yellow Dragon? Tonight, there would be more. Chapter 32:17. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was interested. True Monarch Yellow Dragon didn't care what the others thought. He walked forward and struck the great Tao battle tablet that determined the outcome of the battle. He then looked up at Lin Sun. I hope you won't disappoint this old man. Beezy's a rain of light intertwined and laws surged. The Tao arena once more appeared. Lin Sun and True Monarch Yellow Dragon both appeared on the Tao arena, facing off against each other. The entire crowd was in an uproar. This Lin Sun has fought 17 battles and still agrees to fight True Monarch Yellow Dragon? Is he crazy? Many people found this hard to believe. A normal person would never make such a decision. He could have had someone else fight in his place, so why did he insist on doing so? Lin Sun isn't an idiot. Have you ever seen an idiot who could kill Demon Lord Hu Yong at the Creation Realm? Moreover, Lin Sun defeated 17 old fellows in a row. Since he dares to do this, he must have something to rely on. Some people's eyes blazed with anticipation for this battle. True Monarch Yellow Dragon isn't an ordinary boundless realm heavyweight. This old fellow's foundation is so deep that very few people in the world of Life Lotus can compare to him. Lin Sun doesn't have much hope of defeating him. So what if he loses? This is a battle to decide victory and defeat, not a battle to the death. The distant spectators discussed in high spirits, their attention drawn by the battle that was about to unfold. True Monarch Yellow Dragon's strength had long been witnessed by everyone during these epochs. How could his appearance not attract attention? And Lin Sun wasn't simple either. Jiang Shan Shui, Ying Tiansheng, and the others were also filled with anticipation. This battle was of utmost importance and would decide the course of the battle. Young friend Lin, is he really confident in his victory? Sun Daoyan and Godlord Ling Long felt somewhat uneasy. Based on what I know, he never does anything he's not sure of. Xing Jianxia softly said. On the Tao arena, True Monarch Yellow Dragon was completely reassured by Lin Sun's appearance. He smiled and said, Young man, remember this old man's words. I will make you wholeheartedly accept your defeat. Lin Sun smiled. Then you should also remember that committing suicide to seek defeat is a disgrace. The two clashed, causing the atmosphere on the battlefield to become somber. When a nomological power suppressing his body disappeared, True Monarch Yellow Dragon formed a hand seal and shouted, Rise! Clang! The pine-patterned ancient sword on True Monarch Yellow Dragon's back charged into the sky, and it was like a clear and translucent pool of water in autumn. Its vast sword insight gave rise to circle after circle of ripples of the laws that surged through the 9 heavens. Kill! When the sword slashed down, the spectators felt a sharp pain in their eyes, and they felt suffocated. The ancient sword with pine markings seemed to have transformed into the sharpest and brightest ray of light in the world, and it was fierce to an unimaginable extent and terrifying to the point it caused one's heart to palpitate. The moment an expert made a move, one would know whether or not he was an expert. As soon as Yellow Dragon used his sword, he revealed the peak power of a terrifying magnate, which was far more powerful than those old monsters who had fought with Lin Sun before. All the onlookers were amazed and trembled. Strong. He was simply too strong. It was also because of this sword that the hearts of Ing Tianshang, Jiang Yinshui, and the others were boiling. Such a sword path was so powerful. Lin Sun's expression was as calm as an ancient well. Only his abyss-like black eyes reflected the oncoming sword, and the fighting intent in his heart suddenly erupted. The previous 17 battles were like accumulating strength over and over again. Every time he won, his fighting intent condensed. It also nurtured an invincible belief in himself. But now, true Monarch Yellow Dragon's sword completely ignited the accumulated strength in Lin Sun's heart. Rise! The Taoist sword whizzed out of the abyssal sword cauldron and slashed across the sky. Clang! The two swords collided, as if two supreme swords were fighting. The terrifying power of the sword collided fiercely, setting off a torrent of the great way that swept through the world. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. This strike had shaken their minds. Guided by 10,000 thunders, the sword devours the heavens. True Monarch Yellow Dragon's sleeves fluttered in the wind. With a thought, the ancient sword with pine markings suddenly released a terrifying thunderbolt that shook Lin Sun's Taoist sword and sent it flying. Then, true Monarch Yellow Dragon stepped into the void. His momentum was like the sun that illuminated the ages, penetrating the entire battlefield. His momentum was so strong that even Ing Tianshang, Jiang Yinshui, and the others felt oppressed. A strange look flashed across their eyes. This old guy was even stronger than the rumors said. If it weren't for Lin Sun, it would have been impossible to force him to use his full strength. 10,000 streams return to the sea. My Tao returns to the sword. With a loud shout, true Monarch Yellow Dragon slashed down again. The ancient sword with pine markings swept over like a torrent of water that could drown the heavens. Clang! Lin Sun resisted with the Taoist sword. Just as he blocked the majestic sword, true Monarch Yellow Dragon attacked again. My Tao is boundless. My sword is flawless. Buzz! The ancient sword with pine markings drew a circle in the void, showing a perfect and invulnerable charm. What it contained was the indescribable power of rules. Boom! When the sword fell, Lin Sun's figure was shaken. He took a few steps back, his chi and blood surging all over his body. There was a complete uproar outside the battlefield. Everyone knew that true Monarch Yellow Dragon was very strong, but only when they saw him fight did they realize that his strength had reached such a shocking level. Above the 5 elements heaven pass, the expressions of Sun Daoyin and Divine Lord Linglong changed. Only Sun Daoyin and Divine Lord Linglong could maintain their composure, but they couldn't help but feel nervous. After all, this was the first time Lin Sun had been forced back in a head-on clash in more than a dozen battles. Storms of the 8 directions, 10 immeasurable directions. On the battlefield, true Monarch Yellow Dragon was like a supreme ruler. His sword flew through the void and roared proudly at the heavens. His power and style stunned everyone present. Swish! Terrifying sword chi swept out, whistling like a storm from all directions. It rumbled and spread across the battlefield. Everyone could see that Lin Sun had nowhere to hide. However, Lin Sun had no intention of dodging. His black eyes were like lightning as he charged forward, swinging his sword to meet the attack head-on. At the same time, his battle intent was released like never before. Rumble, rumble, as the battle between the two broke out, the entire battlefield was filled with violent sword chi. The terrifying scene sent a chill down the spines of many old monsters. If they were in Lin Sun's shoes, they probably wouldn't be able to withstand true Monarch Yellow Dragon's tyrannical attack. Looking at Lin Sun, although he could withstand the attacks like the Yangtze River, he was repeatedly shaken back and forth. There was no doubt that true Monarch Yellow Dragon had gained the upper hand. This made Ing Tianshang, Jiang Yinshui, and the others all beam with joy. They were all excited, and the haze that had accumulated in their hearts was swept away. Young man, how do you feel? True Monarch Yellow Dragon's laughter resounded in the battlefield, bold and unrestrained like a god. Just SOSO. Lin Sun said casually. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. True monarch Yellow Dragon sneered, and his attacks became even more terrifying. An ancient sword with pine patterns swept out, splashing supreme sword chi. If heaven and earth are deficient, my sword will make up for it. Yin and yang are pure and turbid, black and white are separated. The great way is boundless, and my lord rises and falls. Unimaginable swordsmanship was released by true monarch Yellow Dragon at will, and incredible visions emerged. Some old monsters were dazzled and fascinated. Even Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, and the others had to admit that true monarch Yellow Dragon's combat power was stronger than theirs. Under such fierce attacks, Lin Sun's situation became more and more dangerous, giving people a feeling that he was completely suppressed and could not hold on at any time. Some people even couldn't help sighing, wondering why Lin Sun was so stubborn just now. Zhu Tianjun even transmitted his voice with a smile. Everyone, as soon as Lin Sun is defeated, we will take turns to defeat those old guys in Sword Gorge. We must finish the battle quickly. By then, we only need to win 5 battles in a row, and the 5 elements heaven pass will be within our reach. But at this moment, on the battlefield, Lin Sun suddenly let out a long laugh. Old guy, it seems that all your strength is just like this. I don't even have the chance to be convinced. True monarch Yellow Dragon raised his eyebrows and was about to speak, but there was a sudden change in the battlefield. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and the 5 Tao forms came out. Boom! The divine light spread all over the sky, and true monarch Yellow Dragon staggered and was shaken back. Now, the 5 Tao forms were no weaker than Lin Sun. When they acted together, the dangerous situation was resolved in an instant. The spectators in the distance were all stunned. It's his 5 Tao forms. I expected it. There were also some old monsters who cried out. In the world of Life Lotus last time, there were many rumors about Lin Sun's 5 Tao forms. However, as Lin Sun reached the boundless realm, people almost ignored this matter. It was also at this time that they suddenly came to their senses. It was said that Lin Sun's 5 Tao forms were no weaker than Lin Sun himself. Didn't this mean that there were 6 Lin Sun fighting side by side on the battlefield now? Thinking of this, many people gasped. Sure enough, Ying Tiansheng gritted his teeth, and his face became gloomy. He hadn't seen Lin Sun use the 5 Tao forms before, which made him think that Lin Sun hadn't had time to temper them after reaching the boundless realm. But now it seemed that Lin Sun had hidden the 5 Tao forms as his trump card, and only chose to use them now. Zhu Tianjun felt as if he had been slapped hard in the face. Just now, he had suggested what to do next if Lin Sun was defeated. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Sun used the 5 Tao forms and turned the situation around. What was the difference between this and a slap in the face? He finally used it. Xinjiang Gorge and Fu Nanli were relieved. The reason why they were so calm before was that they knew very well that Lin Sun hadn't used the 5 Tao forms yet. Damn it! On the battlefield, true monarch Yellow Dragon's face darkened. This unforeseen event had also caught him off guard. However, before he could think more, Lin Sun and his Tao doppelganger had already rushed over. Boom! In the blink of an eye, true monarch Yellow Dragon was besieged. There was a storm of attacks from all directions, drowning his figure. The situation of the whole battlefield was also completely reversed at this moment. More updates for you. Chapter 32:18. True monarch Yellow Dragon had been heroic and valiant, like a god who ruled over the way of the sword, looking down at him with disdain and confidence, causing everyone to exclaim in admiration. But at this moment, he had fallen into a tight encirclement and was powerless to escape. This change was too fast, and everyone was shocked. Lin Sun's strength once again shocked everyone present. Just his true self alone was already so powerful. If he were to add on the 5 great Taoist forms, in the world of the Life Lotus, he was practically at the peak. Rumble, on the battlefield, true monarch Yellow Dragon was in a very miserable situation. Let alone counterattacking, it was difficult for him to even protect himself. It wasn't long before he was riddled with injuries. His nose bridge had been smashed in and blood was flowing everywhere. He roared again and again, trying to kill his way out of the encirclement, but it was all in vain. This caused everyone's hearts to palpitate with fear. True Monarch Yellow Dragon was a powerful old monster, but he had still been beaten to such a state. Who would dare to believe that he had been talking and laughing with such arrogance just a moment ago? "Are you convinced?" asked Lin's son. "I won't accept it even if I die." True Monarch Yellow Dragon roared. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hair was disheveled. He looked exceptionally ferocious. Bang, bang, bang. Dense amounts of fist force, sword chi, palm prints, and finger force seemed like a violent torrent that charged over from all directions, and it blasted his body to the point it was damaged and fresh blood sprayed out. That scene made Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, and the others' hearts turn cold. They had hoped that true immortal Yellow Dragon would be able to turn the situation around, but now it seemed that even true immortal Yellow Dragon wouldn't be able to do it. Even though Lin Sun had gone through 17 battles and was not in his peak state, his combat power was not something that Yellow Dragon Immortal could fight against. "Are you convinced?" Lin asked again. At this moment, he and the 5 Taoist forms attacked together, and it was no different from pressing True Lord Yellow Dragon to the ground and beating him up. "I refuse to accept this." True Monarch Yellow Dragon howled madly. "Brother Xing, does young friend Lin intend to fight until True Monarch Yellow Dragon admits defeat?" Sun Daoyan couldn't help but ask. Didn't that old man Huang Long say that he wanted to convince little friend Lin wholeheartedly? Right now, little friend Lin is just borrowing his spear to attack his shield. Xing Jin Gorge smiled and said. Sun Daoyan and God, Lord Linglong glanced at each other, strange expressions on their faces. They didn't expect that Lin's son was so vengeful. True Monarch Yellow Dragon is finished. At this moment, even the spectators in the distance were able to discern that True Monarch Yellow Dragon had no chance of turning the situation around. This made their hearts churn, and their understanding of Lin's son changed. Boom! In next to no time, violent rumbles resounded throughout the battlefield. Under everyone's gaze, True Monarch Yellow Dragon's tattered body exploded, and blood splattered everywhere. At this moment, many people couldn't help but think, will True Monarch Yellow Dragon choose to end this battle by committing suicide? It was no wonder that people would have such thoughts. Before this battle, True Monarch Yellow Dragon had firmly and forcefully expressed that committing suicide to seek defeat was an opportunistic move, and that he would never do such a disgraceful thing. But now, True Lord Yellow Dragon was in imminent danger. If he did not do this, his soul would probably be heavily injured as well, and it would cause his foundation of the way to suffer irreparable damage. As soon as the body of Yellow Dragon was broken, Lin Sun directly reached out his hand, grabbed his spirit, and imprisoned it. He didn't make another move. He just imprisoned it. This also meant that it was impossible for True Lord Yellow Dragon to commit suicide to seek defeat, unless Lin Sun ruthlessly destroyed his spirit. Old guy, are you convinced now? After the battle, Lin Sun put away the doppelganger of Tao and asked again. At this moment, there was a dead silence. The spectators in the distance were shocked, while Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, and others looked numb, and their hearts sank to the bottom. The defeat of the 17 old monsters was a great blow to them. But now, with the defeat of True Lord Yellow Dragon, their fighting spirit was shaken, and they began to reflect on whether they should continue to challenge on the 5 Elements Heaven Pass. People in Xinjiang Gorge and others looked at each other and were completely relieved. I said, I'm not convinced. True Lord Yellow Dragon's spirit roared, full of unwillingness and anger. But just now, you try to end this battle by committing suicide. Fortunately, I imprisoned your spirit at the first moment, Lin Sun said with a smile. His words stunned everyone present. It turned out that True Lord Yellow Dragon really wanted to commit suicide to seek defeat. This was too embarrassing. It was like slapping himself in the face. At the thought of True Monarch Huang Long's powerful attitude, many of the spectators couldn't help but burst into laughter. Lin Sun, if you want to humiliate me in this way and make me lose face, you're making a big mistake. Let me tell you, as long as you're alive, there's always a chance for revenge, no matter how great the humiliation and hatred are. True Lord Yellow Dragon's eyes were full of resentment. You may have a chance to go to the ruins of Tao in the future, but your friends and relatives will come to the Sea of Fate sooner or later. At that time, all the enemies you've offended will take revenge on them. There was a dead silence. What he said was extremely straightforward, without any consideration of face or demeanor. Do you know why so many old guys hate you as soon as you arrive in the world of Life Lotus? It's because your master, the master of CUN, has offended too many people here. They can't take revenge on your master, so they can only vent their anger on you, the successor of the master of CUN. True Lord Yellow Dragon's expression was ferocious. The surroundings grew even more silent, because everyone knew that true Monarch Yellow Dragon was right. Like Lord of Heaven Candle and Saint Emperor Kong Yu, which one of them didn't become enemies with the master of CUN, so they regarded Lin Sun as the target of revenge after he appeared. Lin Sun's expression was calm, as if he didn't care about all this. He said casually, "Since I've personally tasted this kind of revenge, I naturally won't let it happen again." After a pause, he said, "My master didn't kill all of you. Perhaps he was merciful, or there were other reasons, or maybe he didn't take you old bugs seriously at all. But I'm different. I've never shown any mercy to my enemies." He looked at the enemies in the distance. "Unless you hide in your own epic and don't come out, I'll definitely kill you one by one in the world of Life Lotus." It was like a cold wind from the abyss blowing through people's hearts. Many old monsters in the field stiffened, and their expressions changed abruptly. In the past, no one would care about the threat of a young man. But now no one dared to ignore it. The spectators in the distance were all awestruck. Lin Sun's words were obviously meant for them. That was, anyone who made enemies with Lin Sun would be regarded as an enemy and must be eliminated. Hee, if you can really do it, then you'll be able to do it. But why are you still hiding in the 5 elements heaven pass? True Monarch Yellow Dragon sneered. Lin Sun sneered. "Don't you think it's stupid of you to ask such a question?" Then he glanced at the crowd. "You sent 40 to 50 people from each camp to deal with me, and you still ask me why I'm hiding here? You're not stupid, you're bad." Yellow Dragon still wanted to say something, but he was directly sealed by Lin Sun. At this moment, the battle was not over. Although true Monarch Yellow Dragon only had his primordial spirit left, he wasn't in mortal danger. As a result, the nomological powers of the battlefield didn't appear. At this time, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Lin Sun sat cross-legged leisurely, took out a bottle of magic medicine, and began to swallow and refine it. He could directly recover his stamina on the battlefield. The spectators in the distance were all stunned. How could he do this? Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, and the others were also stunned. The corners of their lips twitched, and they felt suffocated and were about to explode with anger. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that Lin Sun would use this method to restore his consumed strength. This was simply similar to seeking defeat by suicide, and it was a shortcut that utilized the rules of the battlefield to obtain victory. The people in the Sword Gorge were all dumbfounded. They didn't know it could be done like this according to the rules of the battlefield. A battle could only last for 6 hours at most. After 6 hours, it would end in a tie. But as long as Lin Sun used it properly, 6 hours was enough for him to recover part of his strength. The atmosphere became very strange. After Lin Sun began to meditate, he immersed himself in cultivation and completely forgot himself. He didn't care about the people outside the battlefield at all. As time went by, Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, and the others were completely disappointed. In the 18 battles, Lin Sun won all the way from Lu Zhongyin to the defeat of true Monarch Yellow Dragon. How could he continue to fight? Moreover, Lin Sun could let others fight for him and take advantage of the rules of the battlefield to recover his stamina. All of this was predetermined. Even if the members of the various camps continued to fight ceaselessly, it would be extremely difficult for them to seize the 5 elements heaven pass. Therefore, they could only give up and retreat. It was shameful to retreat, and it was destined to make them lose face. But compared with these, What made them feel more depressed was that they didn't kill Lin Sun this time. In the future, they were doomed to suffer from Lin Sun's revenge. After all, they came from different camps. Today's alliance was only temporary. When the time came to seize the Life Lotus Taoist altar, they would even become competitors with each other. This was called endless trouble. Time went by little. The spectators in the distance also gradually calmed down. Many of them were even inspired and secretly decided that if they could snatch a heaven pass, they could also imitate Lin Sun's method of not defeating the opponent first and waste 3 hours when they met an opponent to fight for the victory. In this way, even if their opponents wanted to fight one by one, they would have to wait for 6 hours. Of course, the premise was that they had to win like Lin Sun. Otherwise, everything was just empty talk. For all the people present, time seemed to become extremely long and torturous. When 6 hours were almost up, Lin Sun, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes. He stood up and looked at the imprisoned spirit of true monarch Yellow Dragon. Although the latter's state of mind was extremely gloomy, he had become extremely calm. When he noticed Lin Sun's eyes, true monarch Yellow Dragon immediately had a premonition that something was wrong. Chapter 32:19. A sharp pain came from his spirit, and Yellow Dragon couldn't help but let out a shrill groan. Just when he couldn't hold on any longer, the power of rules in the battlefield emerged and pulled him back from the brink of death. Buzz, with a flash of spiritual light, Yellow Dragon's spirit appeared outside the battlefield, and some big shots around him immediately came to his rescue. How could it be? My Great Way Foundation has been mostly destroyed. Yellow Dragon roared angrily. Everyone nearby shuddered with fear. Even if there was a chance to restore his Great Way Foundation, it would take a lot of time and effort. Lin Sun had already returned to the pass of 5 elements. Looking at Yellow Dragon's pained expression in the distance, he couldn't help but sneer. You said you'd let me lose wholeheartedly. Now that your Great Way Foundation has been severely damaged, you're in such pain? I'll kill you someday. Yellow Dragon's eyes turned red, and he screamed. For someone like him, such a serious injury meant that he had no chance to fight for the opportunity to go to the ruins of Tao. Why wait? If you choose the life and death duel now, let's fight again. Lin Sun said with a smile. Yellow Dragon was about to go mad with anger. He was about to say something when he was stopped by the people around him. What was the point of saying something angry at this moment? Let's go. Ying Tiansheng took a deep breath and left with the people around him. They had already made up their minds to evacuate. The reason why they waited until now was that they were worried that Yellow Dragon would be taken advantage of by Lin Sun if he was alone. Soon, Jiang Shanshui, Zhu Tianjun, and Saint Emperor Kongyu also left. From beginning to end, these old monsters were all gloomy and silent. Until their figures disappeared, the area in front of the pass of 5 elements suddenly became empty. As for the spectators in the distance, they all tactfully chose not to approach. After witnessing the previous battles, how could they not understand that from today on, with Lin Sun here, it would be almost impossible to shake them? Let's go. There's no chance. Some old monsters even shook their heads and chose to leave. What happened today will cause a sensation in the world of Life Lotus again. Someone murmured. Today, led by Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, Zhu Tianjun, Huang Long Deity, and Saint Emperor Kongyu, the 5 camps had joined forces and gathered nearly 50 old monsters to lay a deadly trap for Lin Sun in front of the 5 Elements Pass. But with the appearance of Lin Sun, all this was subverted and reversed. Lin Sun first used his 3,000 doppelgangers to break through the layers of deadly traps and rescue the Mountain Wind Pathmaster and the others. Then, he seized the opportunity to occupy the 5 Elements Heaven Pass. Then, after 18 rounds, Lu Zhongyin, Region Lord Qingtu, and other old monsters appeared one after another, but they were all defeated by Lin Sun. In particular, the crushing defeat of True Lord Yellow Dragon had crushed the fighting spirit of the old monsters of the 5 major factions. They had no choice but to retreat resentfully. As for Lin Sun, he, who had won 18 battles in a row, had undoubtedly created a bloody and dazzling miracle in front of the five elements heaven past today. Since ancient times, no one had been able to attain the immeasurable Tao in the sea of fate. But Lin did it. Since ancient times, no one had been able to win 18 matches in a row. But Lin's son had done it. Since ancient times, no young man who had just attained the immeasurable Tao could possess such a heaven-defying combat power like Lin's son. It was conceivable what kind of waves such news would cause when it came out. Waves. Sure enough, on the same day, what happened in front of the five elements heaven pass spread like a hurricane, causing the world of life lotus to fall into an unprecedented shock. This lad's momentum has been built up. It's going to be difficult to kill him. Du Feng, the leader of the Buddhist era, could not help but let out a long sigh when he heard the news. Whether it was in the world of life lotus last time or now, none of the camps led by him had taken action to deal with Lin's son. It was not that they didn't want to, but Du Feng was very clear that there were countless old monsters in the world of life lotus who wanted to kill Lin's son. There was no need for them to do anything. There would be someone to deal with Lin's son. But Du Feng did not expect that Ng Tiansheng and the other old monsters of the five major factions would be defeated in front of the five elements heaven pass. To Du Feng and the others, this kind of news was no less than a heavenly nightmare. If I had known this would happen, I would have joined forces with Ng Tiansheng and the others. A big shot of the Buddhist era said with a frown. He also knew that it was too late to say anything now. It was just that he did not feel good in his heart. Although this lad is heaven-defying, he is not really invincible. We can't lose our footing. Du Feng said softly. Even Yellow Dragon True Monarch was defeated by him. Could it be that his current strength is above that of the giants of this realm, and is on par with a demoness like Su Wanjun? The atmosphere in the camp of the witch era was heavy and oppressive. Not to be on par with them, but at least he is one of the top people in the Sea of Destiny. Who would have thought that a guy at the early stage of the Boundless Realm could be so powerful? It seems that Lei Song and the others from the witch cult have all been killed by this lad. There was a lot of discussion. Only Wang Xinghai, the leader of the witch era, did not say a word. After hearing the news, he fell into silence. His old face was cloudy and uncertain. After a long time, when no one said anything, Wang Xinghai said in a low voice, "This lad will definitely come for us. If not this time, it will be the next time. We have to be prepared in advance." His shocking words made everyone tremble. The news continued to spread. Today, the world of the Life Lotus was destined to be turbulent. At the Avalon of Five Elements, it was a different scene. "Come, let's drink." They sat cross-legged in the traversing Sword Gorge, each with a jar of wine beside them. They drank boldly and were in high spirits, their expressions relaxed and joyful. One should enjoy life to the fullest. They did not expect that after today's massacre, they would still be able to firmly occupy the Avalon of Five Elements. No one dared to offend them anymore. Ha ha ha. Actually, all of us have to thank young brother Lin. I, Senior by Zay, and the others don't even hold any hope in the struggle for the Grand Tao in this era. After all, it's utterly impossible for all of us to seize a heavenly pass. So how could we possibly have the chance to seize a Tao altar? The Mountain Wind Path Master laughed heartily. But now, with our young friend Lin, we can drink to our heart's content in the Avalon of Five Elements. This is F** King Awesome. M.O. Bays, Mu Chongyun, and the others could not help but laugh. Even the taciturn Xiao He smiled. Thinking of today's events, their hearts were still surging with excitement. We did not expect the enemies to be so impatient on the first day of entering the world of the Life Lotus. Fortunately, our young friend Lin is here to turn the tide and quell the massacre. Traversing Sword Gorge sighed. Lin's son could not stand it anymore. From the beginning of the banquet, these old fellows had been praising him so much that he could not even be humble. "Young friend Lin, a toast to you." Sun Daoyan raised his wine jar and said in a deep voice. God Lord Linglong also raised her cup with a smile and looked at Lin's son with her beautiful eyes. Lin's son smiled and drank with her. From beginning to end, Xia Ji sat next to Lin's son and focused on eating and drinking. Not long after the battle, Lin Sun released Xia Ji from the Eternal Arc and introduced her to the Mountain Wind Path Master and the other old monsters. The old monsters subconsciously regarded Xia Ji as Lin Sun's confidant and were very polite and warm to her. However, Xia Ji's character was too indifferent. She only had eyes for Lin Sun, so those old monsters were very sensible not to disturb her. When the banquet ended, Lin Sun and Xia Ji sat together and said, "From today onwards, you can cultivate the power of destiny here with peace of mind." Xia Ji's current strength was almost equivalent to Lin Sun's strength when he was in the great perfection of the rule of distortion. In this world of the life lotus, there is the most complete power of destiny, which could be sensed and absorbed by Xia Ji immediately. In this way, she could refine the sealed power in her body in the shortest time possible. It should be known that what was sealed in Xia Ji's body was all the Eternal Night Emperor's cultivation, and Eternal Night Emperor was very likely a person who had passed through 9 great silent, fateless tribulations. If she could refine the sealed power, Xia Ji's combat power was destined to achieve a breakthrough by leaps and bounds. "Yes," Xia Ji nodded. "I'm going to cultivate now." Lin Sun was surprised. It was the first time he saw Xia Ji take the initiative to cultivate. In the past, she only ate and slept. She had never been interested in cultivation. Xia Ji glanced at Lin Sun and seemed to see through his mind. She said, "Here, I feel a stronger and more complete breath of the law of fate, which makes the power in my body restless. This has never happened before." Lin Sun immediately showed a thoughtful expression. Could it be that the place where the 9 heavenly gates were located was the core of the power of destiny? Xia Ji had already sat cross-legged and stretched out a pair of white and clean hands in the void. A pair of crystal-clear eyes like stars were slightly closed. In next to no time, strands of crystalline and illusory threads descended from the sky and descended into her hands. Her fair hands were gradually enveloped by an expanse of dazzling and misty light, and they emanated circle after circle of obscure and mysterious fluctuations of the energy of destiny. Incomparably pure, as time went by, more and more power of destiny fell from the sky. Like a magnificent snow-white rain of light, it completely submerged Xia Ji's graceful figure, holy and ethereal. Although it was not the first time Lin Sun saw such a scene, he could not help but be shocked. The rule of destiny. For example, Su Wanjun, a powerful and terrifying existence, had only comprehended a little bit of the rule of destiny after struggling in the sea of destiny for 13 years. But Xia Ji could directly sense and absorb the power of destiny. How nature-defying was this? In the distance, the figures of the Sword Gorge appeared. Obviously, they were alarmed and came to investigate. When they saw the scene of Xia Ji refining the power of destiny, these old monsters were also stunned, and indescribable shock surged in their hearts. Only then did they suddenly realize that they seemed to have completely underestimated Lin Sun's beauty. Chapter 32:20. The atmosphere was silent. The old monsters' hearts were in turmoil, and they even faintly looked envious. Even though this was the world of the life lotus that was filled with the rule of destiny, even though they were powerful, they had not been able to touch the threshold of the rule of destiny in countless years. Strictly speaking, in the ocean of destiny, almost no one had been able to comprehend the power of destiny in the past years. It wasn't that they didn't want to. It was that the power of this rule was too taboo. Even if one had peerless talent, it would be difficult to pry into it. However, Xia Ji could actually absorb the power of the rule of destiny and refine it so naturally. One could imagine how shocked those old monsters were. After a long time, they silently turned around and left the Sword Canyon. From the beginning to the end, they didn't ask anything. It was good to see such a thing. Lin Sun had been sitting beside Xia Ji. Suddenly, he had a thought. The 4 great Tao ruins all had the power of origin. For example, the 5 sequences of the ultimate ruins were born from the origin of the ultimate ruins. For example, The rule of creation was born in the long river of the ruins of creation. The rule of destiny was also born in the power of the Kunlun ruins' origin. One had to know that his nirvana profundity could fuse the 5 sequences of the ultimate ruins and the rule of creation into one, so why couldn't he comprehend and refine the rule of destiny? In the past, he couldn't sense the mysteries of the rule of destiny. Perhaps it was because he was limited by talent and cultivation base. However, he was already at the boundless realm now, and the nirvana profundity had undergone a tremendous transformation. Could he already sense the mysteries of the rule of destiny? Thinking of this, Lin Sun quietly circulated his qi and calmed his heart to sense. Time passed bit by bit. There was no movement from Lin Sun. He was a little disappointed. Could it be that the rule of destiny wasn't something that anyone could comprehend? Just as Lin Sun was about to give up, Xia Ji, who was cultivating, seemed to have sensed something. She opened her beautiful eyes and looked at Lin Sun in confusion. Previously, she felt that the rule of destiny that she had drawn over was a little disobedient, as if it wanted to escape. How could she be willing to give up? She immediately forcefully absorbed the rule of destiny that wanted to escape. However, as time passed, the rule of destiny that was drawn down from the sky became more and more disobedient, as if it wanted to break free from her control. At this moment, when Xia Ji saw Lin Sun sitting cross-legged beside her, she suddenly understood something and immediately stopped absorbing the power of the rule of destiny. Then, Xia Ji saw that the wisps of the power of the rule of fate that were falling down like silk threads were all rushing towards Lin Sun. I see. Summer Solstice suddenly understood and felt a little apologetic in her heart. Before, he only cared about his own cultivation, but forcibly occupied many of the rules of fate that could have been sensed by Lin Sun. It was really not right. In other words, Lin Sun could have understood the law of fate, but because he was too close to Xia Ji, the breath and power of the law of fate were all occupied by Xia Ji at this time, as if to make up for the little apology in her heart. Xia Ji directed all the power of fate she had sensed to Lin Sun. Lin Sun, who originally intended to give up, suddenly trembled, while strands of obscure and inexplicable profundities of the great Tao surged in his heart. Even though it was imperceptible, Lin Sun was instantly excited. This was the aura of the great Tao of destiny. Who would have thought that when he intended to give up, there would be a bright light at the end of the tunnel? It turns out that the power of the law of fate can be comprehended by me. Lin Sun forcefully restrained the excitement in his heart and calmed his mind to comprehend it with the power of nirvana. But soon, he felt as if his entire body was drowned by the endless power of the great Tao, causing his mind to feel as if it had instantly fallen into a vast ocean. The waves and tides that assaulted his face were all the aura of fate. Lin Sun was caught off guard. Wasn't the power of the law of fate he sensed too surging and strong? It was like an ocean of fate. He couldn't sense anything before, but now he sensed so much all at once. This made Lin Sun feel as if he had suddenly become rich and had experienced great ups and downs. He didn't know that the reason for this was that Xia Ji was compensating him. Whoosh soon, Lin Sun held his breath in concentration and immersed himself in the indescribably profound comprehension. Fate was a taboo in Supreme Tao. All beings with intelligence had their own fate, and from the moment they were born, the trajectory of their fate had already begun. In the mortal world, some people were born in rich families and lived in luxury since childhood, while some were born in poor places and found it difficult to survive. These could be regarded as the starting point of the trajectory of fate. There were billions of living beings in the world, and each of them was different. The direction of the trajectory of fate was fate. There were billions of fates, but some were similar, while others were not. The good or bad of fate would be affected by too many forces. Birth, aging, illness and death, love and hatred, and even every move and word in life were very likely to be the turning point of fate. But if ordinary people didn't embark on the path of cultivation, they would be trapped in the cycle of birth, aging, illness and death for the rest of their lives, unable to transcend. For them, fate could be changed, but life and death were beyond their control. Sooner or later, they would turn into a pile of yellow soil. For practitioners who went against the natural order, even though the path they took was different, there was only one purpose, which was to transform their own strength again and again, change their fate again and again, so that they would no longer be trapped in the cycle of birth, aging, illness, and death, and completely transcend the great Tao. Practitioners in the longevity realm could live forever. Practitioners in the immortal realm could live forever. Eternal realm could live forever. Just the names of these realms were enough to know that once one stepped into them, one's fate was bound to become completely different. But even cultivators themselves found it very difficult to truly control their own destiny. Because on the path of cultivation, death and calamity were everywhere, and unforeseen events were everywhere in every realm. Every choice, every thought, and every inadvertent action might have a different influence and change to one's own fate. However, compared to ordinary people, practitioners could at least seek the way to change their fate, and they could seek the power to control their own fate and not the heavens. However, although there were countless almighty figures in this world, since ancient times until now, there were very few who could truly comprehend the power of fate and see through its profundities. Just like the ocean of fate, there were all the almighty figures that had stepped into the boundless realm from various epochs. Yet it was practically impossible to comprehend the profundities of fate. From this, it could be seen what a taboo this path was. At this moment, Lin Sun was comprehending the profundities of the grand Tao of fate. Suddenly, Xingjian Gorge seemed to have sensed something and looked into the distance. Noiselessly, a golden bright, divine bird flew toward the pass of 5 elements with a beautiful figure on its back. The figure was dressed in a red dress and was as delicate as a young girl. Her skin was crystal clear and fair, and she looked radiant. It was Su Wanjun. Why is she here? Fu Nanli, Mountain Wind Taoist, and the others were also alarmed and walked over. Su Wanjun's figure quickly stopped in front of the 5 elements heavenly pass, and she looked in the direction where Lin Sun and Xie Ji were with a dazed expression. Wisps of dreamlike power of fate descended from the sky and bathed Lin Sun and Xie Ji. All of this attracted Su Wanjun's attention. Fellow Taoist, please come to the 5 elements heavenly pass for a chat. Xingjian Gorge cupped his hands and said, last time in the world of the Life Lotus, Su Wanjun had appeared and single-handedly restrained Yellow Dragon True Lord, Heaven Candle Lord, and the other old monsters. This was a great favor. Although they were rather fearful of Su Wanjun in the Travel Sword Gorge, they knew that it would be a piece of cake for this lone devil who killed without batting an eyelid to occupy a heaven pass. In fact, if she wanted to go to the ruins of Tao, she could have done it many years ago. In other words, Xingjian Gorge and the others didn't think Su Wanjun was here to seize the pass. I just want to take a look. You don't have to pay attention to me. Su Wanjun's eyes were still fixed in the direction where Lin Sun and Xie Ji were. Xingjian Gorge and the others looked at each other and realized that it must be the power of the rule of fate that attracted this devil. The atmosphere was silent. Seeing that Su Wanjun didn't move for a long time, Xingjian Gorge and the others didn't disturb her. One day later, Lin Sun woke up from the wonderful enlightenment. How much did you comprehend? Xie Ji's voice rang in his ears. Lin Sun pondered for a moment and said, it can be regarded as a beginner and a little achievement. However, the power of fate is related to the power of soul, cause and effect, fate, reincarnation, and so on, which really surprised me. Xie Ji said softly, the root of fate lies in life. At the beginning of life, there is cause and effect. Cause and effect means variables, which will accompany life from beginning to end. The interlacing of cause and effect lines also outline the ups and downs of the trajectory of life. This is the so-called fate. And reincarnation involves the ultimate way of change of fate. Once it is broken, one can be reincarnated, and one's own soul can float and change between life and death, existence and non-existence. As for fate, it is the so-called fate. Once it is broken, it is like breaking the shackles of one's own soul, so that one can detach from fate and no longer be fettered by anything. Unfortunately, fate is the ultimate mystery of fate. Even the eternal night, divine emperor, couldn't really see through it. So she had to choose to reincarnate and recultivate. That's why I am today. Hearing this, Lin Sun was shocked. You already know it. Xia Ji nodded and said, from the beginning of my birth to the present, all the power I have refined comes from her. Although she has erased all the memory traces of her previous life, she and I have the same soul. When I began to master the power of fate and cause and effect again, I began to understand things related to her. Speaking of this, her clear eyes were clear and quiet as before. It seemed that she was not talking about her previous life, but a person she didn't want to have anything to do with. Lin Sun couldn't help saying, then, she is she and I am me. Xia Ji seemed to know what Lin Sun was going to say and said in advance, and everything she experienced in this life has no influence on me. At best, I just inherited her soul and power. Finally, Xia Ji concluded. That is to say, she gave me life, and I regard her as my mother. Hearing this, Lin Sun was relieved. Xia Ji was still Xia Ji, not the eternal night divine emperor. Chapter 32:21. Understanding the mysteries of fate didn't change much for Lin Sun's cultivation. After all, his comprehension towards this Tao was merely at the rudimentary level, and he'd only obtain a little. Xia Ji, on the other hand, had an amazing improvement in her combat power, which was comparable to that of Lin Sun at the early stage of creation realm. If this situation continued, Lin Sun suspected that it wouldn't be long before Xia Ji's combat power could be on par with his. This was not impossible. After all, Xia Ji didn't need to understand and practice at all. As long as she refined the power of her previous life sealed in her body, her combat power would be improved by leaps and bounds. After talking for a while, Lin Sun stood up. This was the world of Life Lotus, not a place for meditation. The only thing Lin Sun could do was to provide a place for Xia Ji to cultivate without being disturbed. Senior, Lin Sun found Xingjian Gorge and the others. How's the situation outside? As he spoke, he looked into the distance of the Five Elements Pass. A day had passed. After the battle yesterday, there were only a dozen or so figures around the Five Elements Pass, and they only lingered in the distance, not daring to come close. No one dares to challenge us. Xingjian Gorge smiled. Obviously, the news of yesterday's battle has spread, so those old guys in the world of Life Lotus dare not come rashly. Speaking of this, he remembered something. Yesterday, when you and Miss Xia Ji were cultivating, Su Wanjun came. She stood by the side and watched for 4 hours before she turned and left. Lin Sun was surprised and asked, why didn't you invite her to come to the Five Elements Pass? Xingjian Gorge said, I did, but she refused. He lowered his voice. In my opinion, Su Wanjun was attracted by the scene of you and Xia Ji practicing the way of Life Lotus. Lin Sun nodded and couldn't help sighing with emotion. She had been searching for 13 years without success, but now she saw that he and Xia Ji could understand the way of Life Lotus, which was a big blow to her. My young friend, will you continue to guard here? Or do you have other plans? Mountain Wind Taoist, Lord asked. Lin Sun knew that if he stayed here, he would have a chance to snatch the Life Lotus Taoist altar 9 days later. At that time, they would compete with the cultivators that were guarding the other 8 barriers. Whoever was able to occupy the Tao platform of the Life Lotus and refine, it would be equivalent to grasping the critical factor to head to the ruins of Tao. However, that was also the most dangerous time. Not only did they have to face the top figures of the 8 heavenly passes, but they also had to be on guard against external enemies seizing the opportunity to snatch the heavenly pass. In the past, whenever the battle to seize the Life Lotus Tao altar erupted, it was bound to result in a great deal of deaths and bloodshed. Seniors, do you have any plans? Lin Sun asked. Xingjian Gorge immediately said, We discussed it yesterday. If there's a chance, we hope to send Elder Bai Zhe, Elder Mu, and Xiao He to the myriad Dao ruins. Of course, if you have any plans in the 9 days before we seize the Life Lotus Dao altar, then we'll listen to your arrangements. Everyone looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun pondered and said, 9 days later, I will seize the Life Lotus Taoist altar with all of you. However, in these 9 days, I plan to go to other places. Xingjian Gorge and the others looked at each other with a knowing expression. When they discussed this matter yesterday, they were sure that Lin Sun would not let go of those enemies so easily. We'll go with you. Sun Daoyan and Ling Long stood up. Even if we can't help much, we can at least contribute some strength. This was, of course, a modest remark. With their combat power, they could keep abreast with Tiansheng and Jiang Yanshui. How could ordinary boundless realm cultivators compare with them? I'll stay here with old Fu. Xingjian Gorge said with a smile. If someone comes to seize the Life Lotus Taoist altar, we'll inform you immediately. Even if we encounter a decisive battle or a life-and-death duel, we're confident that we can delay until you return. Obviously, Lin Sun didn't need to think at all. They had already arranged all kinds of things for him. However, Lin Sun was still worried and said with a smile, I'll leave the yellow Taoist body here. In this case, there should be no worries. The talent of the yellow Taoist body was best at defense, and its combat power was no weaker than that of the deity. Even a life-and-death duel, it was enough to suppress old guys like Tiansheng and Jiang Yanshui. As for people like True Lord Yellow Dragon, there were only a small handful of people in the entire world of the Lotus. If such old guys really dared to take advantage of this opportunity to kill them, then they could only wait for Lin Sun's revenge. Just like that, the matter was settled. Next, Lin Sun found Xia Ji and told her to cultivate in peace. Xia Ji didn't object. For her, the world of Life Lotus was a wonderful place to improve her strength. As she comprehended and refined more and more rules of fate, the power sealed in her body was constantly merging with her cultivation. I'll help you kill your enemies in the future. Xia Ji's beautiful face was full of seriousness. Lin Sun smiled and rubbed Xia Ji's head, then left the 5 elements pass with Sun Daoyan and Ling Long. Lin Sun is out. Many old monsters have been lingering in the distance. When they saw Lin Sun and the others rushing out of the 5 elements pass, their hearts tightened. Does he think we're an eyesore and want to deal with us? Someone asked in surprise. The reason why they lingered here was very simple. They wanted to keep track of Lin Sun's movements at all times so that the forces behind them could know what was going on as soon as possible. To put it simply, these old fellows were now playing the role of scouts. He's coming. Someone's pupils shrank and his body stiffened. He subconsciously wanted to turn around and flee. But at this moment, Lin Sun laughed in the distance and said, Don't panic, fellow practitioners. I'm here just to ask you something. I don't mean to fight. How could Lin Sun look for trouble when he had no grievances with them? Immediately, those old monsters felt relieved, but they were still vigilant. Who could guarantee that this wasn't Lin Sun's delaying tactic? What do you want to ask, fellow practitioner Lin? Asked a thin old man with snow-white hair and beard. He stood very far away, as if he would run away if something went wrong. The others looked the same. It could be seen that after the battle yesterday, Lin Sun's tyrannical fighting power had made them all afraid. You must come from different camps. If you have a grudge against me, I'm afraid you don't dare to linger in this area. Since there is no grievance, you don't have to be so nervous. Lin Sun cupped his hands slightly and looked around, looking humble and polite. To tell you the truth, I'm here for revenge. But I don't know where my enemies are now, so I want to ask you for advice. Those old monsters looked at each other, asking them for information about their enemies. If they leaked it, wouldn't it mean offending Lin's enemies? But seeing Lin Sun in front of them, they dared not refuse directly. If they annoyed this guy with extraordinary fighting power, the consequences would be serious. The old man with snow-white hair and beard said, Fellow practitioner Lin, the world of Life Lotus is not big. If you want to find people, you can find them near the 9 passes. Then which pass do you think is the most promising to find them? Lin Sun asked with a smile. looking more humble and polite. The old man's face was twisted and bitter. A moment later, Lin Sun sighed. Fine, I don't want to force myself. Farewell. He left with Sun Daoyan and God Lord Linglong. He's leaving just like that. Those old fellows were bewildered. Only when Lin Sun's figures disappeared did they finally confirm that Lin Sun had really left. They looked at each other and took out their secret communication treasures, sending the news that Lin Sun had left the Five Elements Heaven Pass for revenge to their respective camps. Young friend Lin, are you planning to go to the Yinyang Pass? Sun Daoyan asked on the way. That's right. Just now, the white-haired fellow Taoist told me through voice transmission that Jiang Yushui led the experts of the era of the gods to the Yin and Yang Heaven Pass last night and met up with the forces guarding this pass. Lin Sun casually said. Sun Daoyan and God Lord Linglong finally understood and couldn't help but smile. Those old fellows had been unwilling to speak before, but who could have expected that someone in the shadows would be the first to give in? Then which faction is guarding the Yinyang Pass? God Lord Linglong softly asked. The faction of the era of Confucianism's Saint Emperor Kongyu. Lin Sun said. So the two factions have joined hands again. Sun Daoyan understood. That's right. In the world of Fate Lotus, Jiang Yinshui's faction lost more than half its members, and yesterday, in front of the Five Elements Heaven Pass, Jiang Yinshui's faction was the weakest. Normally speaking, if they chose to work with another faction, they would have no chance of participating in the struggle for the Fate Lotus Dao altar. Saint Emperor Kongyu is an extremely terrifying individual. He is one of the three sovereigns of the era of Confucianism, and even in the Sea of Destiny, he is a hegemon. God Lord Linglong said, in my view, characters like Jiang Yinshui and Ying Tiansheng are even slightly inferior to Saint Emperor Kongyu. Sun Daoyan raised an eyebrow. Could he be stronger than true monarch Yellow Dragon? God Lord Linglong said, there might be a gap, but it's very small. Sun Daoyan couldn't help but become serious. If that's the case, then won't it be troublesome? Jiang Yinshui and Saint Emperor Kong, you had joined hands and were guarding the Yinyang Pass. If they wanted to deal with them, they would have to challenge them. This would make them seem very passive. Do you think that Saint Emperor Kong, you would dare to fight little friend Lin in a life-and-death duel? God Lord Linglong said. Sun Daoyan frowned. Unless he has no other choice, he probably won't choose to put his life on the line. God Lord Linglong said, that's enough. Unless they dare to come out of the Yinyang Pass, little friend Lin, and we will be able to deal with those dangers. Sun Daoyan nodded and looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun smiled. Seniors, there's no need to worry about this. Just act according to the circumstances. As they spoke, they could already see the Yinyang Pass towering between heaven and earth. Chapter 32:22. Yinyang Heaven Pass. It was built on a vast desert, like a black mountain towering there, tens of thousands of feet tall. Lin Sun has grown up. The camp with him as the core has become one of the top forces in Life Lotus world. It's almost impossible to destroy him. On the Yin and Yang Heavenly Pass, Saint Emperor Kongyu sighed. In the world of the Life Lotus, hundreds of old fellows joined forces and formed various factions. Among them, there were only a few top forces. They were led by the Buddhist-era Yuan Dufeng, the Sorcerer-era Yuan Wang Xinghai, the Tao-era Guan Qinxiu, and the Yellow Dragon True Monarch. In addition, there were also lone travelers like Su Wanjun, Qi Qinji, and Yi Wuyin, who were so powerful that no one dared to provoke them. The camps of Ying Tiansheng, Jiang Yinshui, Zhu Tianjun, and Holy Emperor Kong, you could only be regarded as the top forces. Of course, the top forces often chose to form an alliance, so their power could compete with the top forces. For example, in Yinyang Heaven Pass, Holy Emperor Kongyu and Jiang Yinshui chose to form an alliance, so their power could compete with other top forces. It's almost impossible. Jiang Yinshui's face was gloomy. He understood the meaning of Holy Emperor Kongyu's words. If the camp headed by Lin Sun could be regarded as the top force, it undoubtedly meant that it was almost impossible to be defeated in the world of Life Lotus world. The most troublesome thing is that Lin Sun hates us. I'm afraid the world of Life Lotus World won't be peaceful for a period of time. Holy Emperor Kong Yu's eyes flickered. Yesterday, I proposed that Ing Tiansheng and Zhu Tianjun continue to form an alliance with us. At least we can ensure that when Lin Sun takes revenge, we still have a chance to fight back and kill him. But, speaking of this, he couldn't help but sigh. It was impossible for the various powers to sincerely cooperate with each other, and there was a relationship of competition between them. Especially when they were fighting over the Life Lotus Tao altar, intense conflicts would erupt. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the camps to be on the same side, advancing and retreating together. In this way, when Lin Sun retaliated, these camps could only deal with it by their own means instead of being united. Seeing that the atmosphere was somewhat heavy, Jiang Yinshui smiled and said, "It's fine. This time, with our two factions joining hands, it won't be a problem to defend this Yinyang Heaven Pass." Saint Emperor Kong Yu let out a long breath and said, "It would naturally be best if we can hold on until we fight for the Fate Lotus Tao altar." However, at that time, he looked at Jiang Yinshui. "I do not wish for any divergence in our alliance." Jiang Ye's eyes narrowed, and she cupped her fists. "Don't worry, brother. When the time comes to snatch the Life Lotus Tao altar, we will definitely cooperate with you." Sage Emperor Kong Yu laughed heartily. "I'm relieved to hear that. At this moment, you're smiling so happily. Could it be that you know there's going to be a joyous occasion today?" A voice sounded from afar. In an instant, the smile on Saint Emperor Kong Yu's face froze. The faces of Jiang Yinshui and the others also changed. In the distance, Lin Sun, Sun Daoyan, and God Lord Ling Long were flying over. Lin Sun, he actually came to the Yinyang Heavenly Pass. There's going to be a good show to watch. There were quite a few old monsters in the vicinity. When they saw Lin Sun and the others, they were first shocked and then excited. The battle that had taken place outside the Five Elements Heavenly Pass yesterday had already shaken the world. And now, Lin Sun had already killed his way to the Yinyang Heavenly Pass. Who could not guess that Lin Sun had come for revenge? Damn it! Jiang Yinshui's face was ashen, and he was both shocked and furious. Even if he racked his brains, he would never have imagined that Lin Sun's revenge would come so quickly and that he would choose them as his first target. The old monsters from the two camps all had ugly expressions on their faces. "Lin Sun, you were undefeatable yesterday because you had the protection of the Five Elements Heavenly Pass. But if news of your appearance here were spread, aren't you afraid of being trapped and killed here?" Saint Emperor Kong Yu took a deep breath and said indifferently. Lin Sun laughed. "I have just arrived, but you're already threatening me like this. Could it be that you're feeling guilty?" If it were in the past, Saint Emperor Kong Yu and the others would have been overjoyed to see their enemy appear. But now, they all had ugly expressions on their faces. Clearly, after yesterday's battle, they were all fearful of Lin Sun. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to utter such threatening words. Feeling guilty? What a joke. What do I have to feel guilty about? Saint Emperor Kong Yu sneered. On the other hand, the Five Elements Heavenly Pass might not be able to hold on without you, Lin Sun. Don't worry about it. What does this have to do with you, Kong Yu? Sun Daoyan laughed. Saint Emperor Kong Yu's face turned gloomy. Are you really going to fight to the death? The atmosphere became oppressive and somber. Lin Sun stretched out a hand and knocked on the life and death duel tablet. This was his answer. The hearts of everyone present shook, and they couldn't help but gasp. Strong. Too strong. Compared to Saint Emperor Kong Yu's repeated threats, Lin Sun's action was undoubtedly full of confidence and disdain. Any words would pale in comparison to such an action. To Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui, Lin Sun's action was no less than a bolt from the blue. How could they have imagined that Lin Sun would be so straightforward and choose to fight to the death? What should they do? Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui were shocked and angry. They looked at each other. They had already witnessed Lin Sun's strength. If they fought to the death, there were not many people from their two camps who could contend against him. But under the current circumstances, they could not refuse. They had to accept the challenge. Otherwise, they would be expelled from the Yin-Yang Pass after 30 breaths. Buzz. A rain of light rippled, and the life-and-death duel appeared. Everyone was looking at Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui on the Yin-Yang Heaven Pass. They were all thinking excitedly about who the two camps would send out to fight the battle. This is going too far. Saint Emperor Kong Yu roared. Everyone, I would rather lose the Yin-Yang Pass this time. I must exterminate this fiend. That's right. Instead of fighting to the death, why not fight to the death? Jiang Yinshui was also seething with killing intent. The crowd was in an uproar, all of them stunned. Abandon the Yin-Yang Pass. Didn't this mean that even Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui would not dare to fight to the death with Lin Sun? Lin Sun was also stunned, and then he couldn't help but laugh. It seems that I overestimated you all. His voice resounded through the world. The mockery in his words made Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui's faces burn with shame and indignation. Kill! Saint Emperor Kong, you didn't waste any time. With a loud shout, he led a group of old monsters from the Confucian era and charged forward. At almost the same time, Jiang Yinshui led his camp forward. Boom! The world dimmed as a dazzling divine radiance illuminated the desert. The old monsters of the two camps added up to more than 20 people, all of them exuding terrifying auras. When they moved together, they were like gods on an expedition. Run! The others in the vicinity paled and began to flee for fear of being caught up in the shockwaves. Sun Daoyan and Divine Lord Linglong glanced at each other, solemn expressions on their faces. Only Lin Sun remained calm and composed, a blazing fighting spirit igniting in his deep and abyss-like eyes. Compared to a one-on-one battle, he was more looking forward to this kind of melee. But Lin Sun was stunned the next moment. Sun Daoyan and Divine Lord Linglong were stunned as well. Following that, the spectators who had retreated far away were also stunned. They saw the old monsters of Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui's camp, who had charged out menacingly from the Yin and Yang Heavenly Pass, actually teleported away with all their might as soon as they rushed out of the Yin and Yang Heaven Pass. Every one of them fled faster than anyone else. That could be called clean and efficient. Who could believe such a sudden turn of events? Who could have imagined that Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui's camps would be so frightened by Lin Sun's arrival that they would abandon the Yin-Yang Pass and flee in panic? However, it was also precisely because it was too sudden that Lin Sun and the others were too late to give chase. These old fellows have no backbone at all. Lin Sun's lips twitched. He hadn't expected such an absurd thing to happen. If they fight head-on, they'll pay a heavy price. Instead of that, they might as well just leave. Although it's a little embarrassing, they can still preserve their strength. Sun Daoyan also had a strange expression, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But they're running a little too fast. That's troublesome. If we leave now, they'll definitely choose to return here and retake the Yin-Yang Pass. And if we continue to hold out here, something will definitely happen in the Five Elements Pass. Divine Lord Linglong frowned. Lin Sun suddenly swept his gaze around and said in a clear voice, Everyone, the Yin-Yang Pass is now masterless, and I have no intention of forcefully taking it for myself. If you want to take over, you can do so now. His words caused the old monsters in the distance to look at each other. Their hearts stirred. They hadn't expected to pick up such a great bargain, but they quickly calmed down. They knew that once Lin Sun and the others left, Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui would definitely make a comeback and retake the Yin-Yang Pass. This was a great threat to them. But Lin Sun's next words swept away all their worries. Everyone, rest assured, if those fellows dare to return, you only need to send a message to me immediately. I'll definitely come and kill them. Immediately, the crowd boiled over and the old monster's eyes lit up. This was excellent. Taoist Lin, how can I contact you? One of the old monsters couldn't help but ask. Lin Sun smiled and waved his hand, handing over a message talisman. You only need to crush this talisman, and I'll know immediately. Many thanks, Taoist Lin. The old monster's eyebrows rose with joy as he carefully put away the talisman. Chapter 32-23. Seeing this scene, many old monsters were tempted. Taoism Peer Lin, can you give me a message? Many people asked. Lin Sun smiled. In my opinion, you're all here for the life Lotus Taoist altar. So why don't we guard the yin yang heaven pass together? The onlookers were hesitant. They came from different camps, and many of them even hated each other. It was too difficult to get them to cooperate. After all, who would want to stay with the enemy? But Lin Sun's suggestion was quite tempting. There is strength in numbers. If there's a chance to snatch the life Lotus Taoist altar, we can put aside our disputes and hatred for the time being. Suddenly, someone said in a deep voice, I support Taoism Peer Lin's suggestion. I agree. Immediately, there were voices in the field. In the end, only a few old monsters remained silent. Lin Sun didn't force them. Lin Sun didn't force him. He was just offering a suggestion. Soon, Lin Sun left with Sun Daoyin and Divine Lord Linglong. After they watched their figures vanish, all the old freaks in the surroundings finally made a move hastily and charged into the Yin-Yang Pass. As for the old monsters who hadn't expressed their opinions, they stayed where they were, as if they were watching. Sure enough, in less than half an hour, Saint Emperor Kong Yu, Jiang Mingshui, and the other cultivators from the two camps who had escaped earlier all returned. Haha, I knew Lin Sun wouldn't dare to stay here for long. Saint Emperor Kong Yu laughed. He looked like he had everything planned out and could predict the future like a god. The others also revealed a relaxed expression. Why don't you quickly hand over the Yin-Yang Heaven Pass? Jiang Mingshui's eyes were like lightning as he looked at the figures on the Yin-Yang Heaven Pass. His words were full of undisguised killing intent and threat. A bunch of mobs dares to encroach on this place. You're courting death, Saint Emperor Kong Yu said coldly. Ridiculous. Who was the one who fled in panic like a stray dog? A gray-robed old man on the Yin-Yang Heaven Pass laughed. If it was a one-on-one battle, how could anyone here be afraid of any of you? A man in a battle robe said coldly. Just as he said, they seemed to be a motley crew, but every single one of them were old fellows who had cultivated for countless years. If it was a one-on-one battle, they were not afraid of Kong Yu or Jiang Yinshui. Kong Yu, Jiang Shanshui, if you have the guts, you can come and challenge us. But I have to remind you that Lin Sun has handed over his message talisman to us before he left. As long as we crush the talisman, he will kill us at once. If you're not afraid, feel free to try. Someone said calmly and threatened. Seeing this, Saint Emperor Kong Yu and Jiang Yinshui's faces darkened. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would play such a trick. If they wanted to pass the trial, they would have to challenge each other. Regardless of whether it was a life and death duel or a decisive battle, they would have to go through multiple battles. In the battle for the pass, once Lin Sun attacked, the consequences would be serious. This damned bastard, Sage Emperor Kong Yu cursed in his heart. They knew that Lin Sun wouldn't dare to stay here for a long time, but they didn't expect that Lin Sun had colluded with those old fellows in the Yin-Yang Heaven Pass. Ying Tiancheng frowned, a strong sense of frustration surging in his heart. In the end, under the mocking gaze of the crowd, they left. There was no other way. It couldn't be helped. This was a dead end. As long as they challenged the pass, Lin Sun would come as soon as possible. At that time, it would be impossible for them to escape safely like last time. Therefore, they could only leave this place and make other plans. If what happened today gets out, they will lose all their reputation and become a laughing stock. On the Yin-Yang Heaven Pass, people couldn't help laughing. Then what are we waiting for? Spread the news quickly. Someone couldn't help but send the news to other places. While Lin Sun is not here, let's kill the people in Xinjiang Gorge first. When Ying Tiancheng saw the 5 elements heaven pass from afar, his eyes flashed with a cold, killing intent. They had already received the news that Lin Sun had left the 5 elements heaven pass with Sun Daoyin and Divine Lord Linglong. Now, only the people from Xinjiang Gorge were guarding the pass. This was undoubtedly a great opportunity for them to take revenge. Let's give him a taste of his own medicine. No matter how powerful Lin Sun is, he probably didn't expect us to come so quickly. Heavenly Lord Zhu chuckled. This time, the two camps acted together and were confident that they could easily take down the 5 elements heaven pass. Look, Ing Tiansheng and the others from the Devil Era are here. And Zhu Tianjun and the others. Near the Five Elements Heaven Pass, some old monsters were in a commotion, all of them surprised. Lin Sun had only left for 3 hours, but Ing Tiansheng and Zhu Tianjun had already arrived. Obviously, someone had secretly informed them. Ing Tiansheng, Zhu Tianjun, how dare you come here to die? Didn't you learn the lesson from yesterday's fiasco? On the Five Elements Heaven Pass, the people from Xinjiang Gorge and Fu Nanli also noticed Ing Tiansheng and the others. Sure enough, these old guys wanted to take advantage of Lin Sun's absence. Die. Ha ha ha. Xinjiang Gorge, do you think you can defend the Five Elements Heaven Pass? Ing Tiansheng laughed, but his voice was extremely cold. I'll be frank with you. We didn't come here to take the pass, but to kill you old dogs. Don't waste time talking to them. Let's just fight. Zhu Tianjun said leisurely. As he spoke, he turned to a slim man in a silver robe beside him and said, Brother Xiaoyuan, how about you go first? Okay. The man in the silver robe nodded. He stepped forward and waved his sleeve calmly. Buzz. The life and death dual tablet of Tao bust. Then, the silver robe man called Xiaoyuan put his hands behind his back and said indifferently, Who wants to fight with me? Everyone was silent. The spectators were all shocked. Xiaoyuan, an old man who had gone through 6 great desolation tribulations, was even stronger than the likes of Heartpot and Hu Yong Demon Master. Unexpectedly, Xinjiang Gorge and the others showed a hint of pity in the face of such a life and death duel. You brought this upon yourself. Fu Nanli sighed. Ha ha ha. Mountain Wind Path Master laughed like a fox that had eaten a chicken. This scene made Xiaoyuan uncomfortable all over. Before he could react, he saw a familiar figure appear on the Avalon of 5 elements. I've never seen someone as suicidal as you, the person said indifferently. This person was Lin Sun's yellow Taoist physique. Lin Sun. Xiaoyuan, who had his hands behind his back and a proud look on his face, widened his eyes as if he was struck by lightning. Didn't you leave? Ing Tiansheng and Zhu Tianxing's expressions changed. They were caught off guard by this scene. Don't be afraid. This is just a doppelganger of mine. Yellow Taoist physique smiled. They were fooled. Ing Tiansheng and Zhu Tiansheng were anxious and angry. But there was nothing they could do now. Xiaoyuan was too impatient. He had just finished speaking and immediately went to challenge Lin Sun. They couldn't stop him even if they wanted to. Xiaoyuan's old face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his expression was uncertain. There was no time for regret, not even for begging for mercy, because the life and death battle had to be fought to the death. On the other hand, the expressions of the nearby spectators changed. This Xiaoyuan is really too impatient. He didn't even test the waters before rashly issuing a challenge. Now, isn't this no different from courting death? Buzz, the life and death battlefield, appeared in the air. Then, Lin Sun's yellow Taoist physique and Xiaoyuan's figure appeared on it, facing each other from a distance. At this time, Xiaoyuan threw caution to the wind and said coldly, I don't believe that I can't even defeat your doppelganger. Lin Sun's yellow Taoist physique smiled and said, Then let's have a try. Boom! The battle broke out quickly. As soon as Xiaoyuan made a move, he exerted all his Taoism and all his trump cards, as if he was desperate. However, this was destined to be in vain. As Lin Sun's yellow Taoist physique attacked, it easily defeated Xiaoyuan's various killing moves and forces. In just a moment, bang! Xiaoyuan was slapped to the ground. His Taoist body cracked and blood splashed. Before he could struggle to get up, Lin Sun stamped on his feet, crushing his body and spirit and killing him in an instant. The scene of his death made Ing Tiansheng, Tianjunju, and the others shiver. Previously, they had come aggressively, thinking that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kill Sword Gorge and the others in one fell swoop. Who would have thought that Lin Sun's doppelganger would kill Xiaoyuan directly? The onlookers in the distance were also shocked. They were glad that they didn't take the opportunity to snatch the 5 Elements Pass. Otherwise, they would definitely end up like Xiaoyuan. Should we continue? The battlefield disappeared. Lin Sun's yellow Taoist physique floated back to the Five Elements Pass and looked at Ing Tiansheng and the others in the distance. Let's go. Ing Tiansheng took a deep breath, suppressed his anger, and made a decision. What kind of bullish asterisk T opportunity was this? It was clearly a trap. Now that Xiao Yuan had been killed, how could they take the initiative to jump into the trap? It's a pity that it's too late for you to leave now. In the distance, Lin Sun's yellow Taoist physique sighed softly. Suddenly, he stepped into the air and left the Five Elements Pass, heading directly for Ing Tiansheng and the others. Seeing this, Ing Tiansheng and Tianjunju, who were about to leave, looked at each other and had the same thought. Here's our chance. It was just a doppelganger. If it was stationed in the Five Elements Pass, they wouldn't dare to challenge it. But now, knowing that his doppelganger had come out recklessly, it was simply courting death. Let's kill this doppelganger together. Ing Tiansheng made a decision. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable killing intent. There were nearly 20 people on their side, and each of them was a veteran of the great boundless realm. They might not be a match for Lin Sun's doppelganger in a one-on-one fight, but if they attacked together, it would be a different story. Good. Heaven Lord Ju's expression also revealed a piercingly cold expression. Chapter 32:24. In an instant, a great battle broke out. Lin Sun's yellow earth Taoist body was besieged. Ing Tiansheng, Lord of Heaven Candle, and the others felt excited and used all their strength to suppress the yellow earth Taoist body. This made them feel extremely happy. Yesterday, they'd returned in low spirits and lost all face, so the rage that had accumulated in their stomachs was vented at this moment. Naturally, they felt extremely satisfied. The spectators in the distance all trembled with fear. What was going on? How could Lin Sun's clone rush out so rashly, knowing that there were so many enemies? In the distant Avalon of Five Elements, Xingjian Gorge and the others were also sweating. They hadn't expected Lin Sun's yellow earth Taoist body to rush out. Ha! Lin Sun, this clone of yours is doomed. Ing Tiansheng laughed loudly in the battle. Is that so? An indifferent voice sounded between heaven and earth, and then, puff, an old monster's head was suddenly thrown into the air, blood sprinkling in the void. This bloody scene caused everyone's bodies to stiffen and their expressions to change drastically. Then, the void nearby tumbled, and Lin Sun, the four Taoist bodies Sun Daoyan and Divine Lord Linglong appeared out of thin air. Obviously, it was Lin Sun who had chopped off the old monster's head. Damn it! Ing Tiansheng, Lord of Heaven Candle, and the other old monsters immediately realized that something was wrong. They didn't dare to hesitate and chose to escape immediately. Go! Go! Loud shouts shook the sky. Everyone could see that Ing Tiansheng and the others were afraid. But how could Lin Sun just watch them escape? As soon as he appeared, he, Sun Daoyan, and Divine Lord Linglong joined hands to start a massacre. Boom! 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 The world turned upside down, and the sun and moon dimmed. A chaotic battle broke out. Ing Tiansheng, Lord of Heaven Candle, and the others tried to escape with all their strength, while Lin Sun and the others blocked them with all their strength. During this time, Xingjian Gorge, Fu Nanli, Mountain Wind Path Master, and the others rushed out of the Avalon of Five Elements without hesitation and joined the battle. The situation changed completely from this moment on, with Xingjian Gorge, Sun Daoyan, and Divine Lord Linglong restraining them. They formed an encirclement that cut off all the enemy's escape routes. On the other hand, Lin Sun and his five Taoist bodies attacked together, and they carried out a bloody slaughter that swept through the entire battlefield. Even the powerful Ing Tiansheng and Zhu Tianjun couldn't stop Lin's attack. Moments later, just like that, 9 of the old-timers were slaughtered on the spot and turned into ashes. In the end, Ing Tiansheng, Zhu Tianjun, and the others couldn't take it anymore. They collapsed and chose to leave the world of Life Lotus. Even so, Lin Sun and the others still took the opportunity to kill 5 people. When the battle was over, Ing Tiansheng's and Zhu Tianjuan's camps suffered more than half of their casualties. In the Demon Era, where Ying Tiansheng was from, only 5 people managed to escape from the Life Lotus world with their lives intact. Zhu Tianjun's camp was also in a miserable state. In the end, only 3 people managed to escape. As for Lin's side, there was no casualty. When the curtains to the battle were drawn, all the spectators were shocked and horrified. Yesterday, the 5 camps returned in defeat. Today, the old fellows of 2 camps had been slaughtered to the point of abandoning their armor and suffering heavy casualties. In the end, they had no choice but to leave the world of the Lotus in panic. Everyone knew that no matter if it was Ying Tiansheng or Tianzhu, they no longer had the qualifications to fight for the Life Lotus Tao altar. But this wasn't the end. In the following days, the 5 Elements Heaven Pass was still guarded by Lin Sun's yellow Earth Taoist physique and traversing Sword Gorge. Lin Sun's main body and the other 4 Taoist physiques, along with Sun Daoyin and God Lord Ling Long, launched a grand revenge operation in the world of Life Lotus. 7 Stars Heaven Pass. This pass was occupied by true monarch Yellow Dragon's camp. Lin Sun challenged the life and death duel and won 3 battles in a row. He killed 3 old monsters from true monarch Yellow Dragon's camp and seized the 7 Stars Heaven Pass in one fell swoop. True monarch Yellow Dragon had already been defeated by Lin Sun on the battlefield in front of the 5 Elements Heaven Pass. His Taoist physique had exploded and his primordial spirit was severely injured. He hadn't even recovered his vitality. So how could he stop Lin Sun's challenge? When the 7 Stars Heaven Pass was seized, true monarch Yellow Dragon and the remaining old monsters also escaped from the world of Life Lotus. When the news of what happened in the 7 Stars Heaven Pass spread, the entire world of Life Lotus was shaken. Lin Sun and the others had already set off again to kill their way to other places. For a whole 7 days, Lin Sun and the others had been on the move all this time, stirring up one bloody massacre after another. Although the world of Life Lotus was huge, for those who had stepped into the Boundless Realm, 3 days was enough for them to sweep through every inch of the world. In order to hunt down their enemies, Lin Sun and the others had swept through the world more than once. Such a massacre made those terrifying existences who had no enmity with Lin Sun feel horrified, and they deeply understood Lin Sun's fearsomeness. As for those enemies, they were like stray dogs that had lost their homes, frantically fleeing in all directions during these 7 days. But even so, many old monsters still lost their lives. The entire world of Life Lotus was in turmoil during these 7 days, completely disrupted by Lin Sun and the others' massacre. On this day, Lin Sun arrived at the 9 Palaces Heaven Pass. The ones guarding this place were Du Feng and the others from the Buddhist era. Currently, the camp led by Du Feng was one of the top forces in the world of Life Lotus. When Lin Sun, Sun Daoyin, and Divine Lord Ling Long appeared, Du Feng's white eyebrows couldn't help but furrow, and an obscure Buddhist light appeared in his eyes. Taoist Lin, are you planning to start a war with us? Du Feng asked in a low voice. Lin Sun's gaze swept across the 9 Palaces Heaven Pass, and he saw Jiang Yinshui, Saint Emperor Kongyu, and the others who had been chased by him. In fact, among the 5 camps that had joined forces to besiege the 5 Elements Heaven Pass, only 2 camps led by Jiang Yinshui and Saint Emperor Kongyu were left. The cultivators from the other 3 camps, led by Yellow Dragon True Lord, Ying Tiansheng, and Lord of Heaven Candle, had either died or escaped from the world of Life Lotus in advance. Of course, for Lin Sun, the forces of the Buddhist era led by Du Feng were also his enemies. See you tomorrow. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun smiled and left with Sun Daoyin and Divine Lord Ling Long. See you tomorrow. Du Feng's snow-white eyebrows furrowed even more. Tomorrow, the opportunity to seize the Life Lotus Taoist altar would present itself. Without a doubt, Lin Sun planned to start a war with them while seizing the Life Lotus Taoist altar. This battle is ultimately unavoidable. After a while, Du Feng muttered to himself. As a terrifying existence who had survived 7 great desolation tribulations, Du Feng's battle prowess was even stronger than Yellow Dragon True Lord. In the entire world of Life Lotus, there were only 7 or 8 people who could be considered worthy opponents by him. Shu Wanjun, Wang Xinghai, Qi Qianji, Yi Wuyin, and so on. But now there was Lin Sun. Fellow Taoists, it's still not too late to leave now. If you wait until tomorrow, you'll have to wait until the battle for the Life Lotus Taoist altar is over. Du Feng looked at Jiang Yin Shui and Saint Emperor Kongyu. I'm willing to work with you to kill this brat. Jiang Yin Shui's eyes were cold as he spoke resolutely. Saint Emperor Kongyu was silent for a moment before he said, when the time comes, the heavens and earth will work together, but when the time comes, the hero will not be free. This time, we admit defeat. With that, he cupped his hands and said, everyone will meet again in the future. Before he finished speaking, he had already left the world of Life Lotus with his companions. Du Feng and the others felt their hearts churn as they witnessed this scene. Who would have thought that the battle for the Life Lotus Taoist altar would develop to such an extent? Lin Sun alone had stirred up the world and killed so many old people who had lived for countless years. And even a giant like Saint Emperor Kong, you could only bow his head and leave the battlefield. Who wouldn't be moved by this? An incomparably horrifying storm of blood will be unavoidable in tomorrow's battle. Guan Qinxiu, who was guarding the 4 Symbols Heaven Pass, sighed with emotion. These days, Lin Sun had stirred up the entire world of Life Lotus and made people realize how terrifying he was. Under such circumstances, how could Lin Sun miss the opportunity to seize the Life Lotus Taoist altar tomorrow? The world is full of ups and downs, and the years change. The lotus that the master of the square inch has been waiting for is the biggest variable. Everything that has happened in the sky has proved that this variable has the power to overturn everything in the past. In the 6 Harmonies Heaven Pass, a tall and straight man with gray hair fluttering behind his back said slowly, tomorrow, I'd like to see how amazing this variable is. The man held a wine gourd in one hand and the other behind his back, surrounded by the Great Way. His momentum was like that of an immortal. His name was Qi Qianji. The Great Way is the chess piece, and the man is the chess piece. Who can compete with me? In the 8 Diagrams Heaven Pass, a sloppy old man was sleeping soundly on the ground. In his sleep, he mumbled to himself, the affairs of the world are like the zither. Who can compete with me? This variable is going to break the heavens. The sloppy old man's name was Yi Wuyin. If one controls fate, he must transcend fate. If so, the chess piece is the player of the game. Only the player of the game can break free from the ultimate path. In the wilderness, Su Wanjun, who was dressed in red and looked as radiant as a young girl, couldn't help but think of the swordsman's words. Wanjun, only the player of the game is qualified to overturn the game, and this qualification is in the ruins of Tao. Thinking of this, Su Wanjun suddenly thought of Lin Sun and Xia Ji. Maybe I can go and have a look tomorrow? In the 5 Elements Heaven Pass. Isn't your improvement a little too fast? Lin Sun was surprised. Before, he had a competition with Xia Ji. In just 9 days, Xia Ji's combat power was comparable to that of him in the creation realm. This improvement could be said to be universally shocking. Obviously, the power of fate that Xia Ji absorbed and refined in these 9 days gave her incredible benefits. But it's still not enough. I can feel that the power of the seal is still there. Xia Ji said seriously, if you give me another 3 months, I will be able to refine it completely. 3 months is very fast. We just need to come to the world of Life Lotus several times in the future, Lin Sun replied with a smile. He was also looking forward to how powerful Summer Solstice would be after she had completely refined the power left by the Divine Emperor of Eternal Night. P.S. There were many controversial voices in the book review section recently. Goldfish saw it and reflected for a long time. Before finishing the book next month, Goldfish would try her best to write the next big plot. Some unnecessary battles would not be described in detail. The Goldfish would write out all the plot clues seriously. Finally, thank you very much for your feedback and criticism. Chapter 32-25. Early in the morning the next day, Shocking divine radiance of the grand Tao arose simultaneously from the 9 heavenly passes. When looked down from the sky, the 9 heavenly passes were distributed like an enormous circle, and an ancient altar that covered an area of 30 m stood towering at the center. The altar was shaped like a blooming lotus, and it was completely covered and sealed by the mysterious energy of the laws of destiny. When the 9 heavenly passes started to move, this life lotus Tao altar also started to change. Bang! Bang! The energy of the laws of destiny that covered the altar exploded apart layer by layer like broken chains. The entire altar seemed as if it had awoken from its deathly silence, and it emanated a heavy, vast, and primitive aura. When looked over once more, the altar was enshrouded in radiance, covered in chaos, protected by divine radiance, and occasionally a rain of light flowed through its surroundings, causing it to seem even more mysterious. At this moment, the cultivators of the various camps that stood on guard at the 9 heavenly passes moved out at the first possible moment, and they seemed like numerous dazzling droplets of light that charged towards the area where the Fate Lotus altar resided. This area was extremely vast, and it was surrounded by the 9 heavenly passes. It was like an enormous circular battlefield, and the Fate Lotus altar stood towering at the center of the battlefield. Swoosh! Swoosh! Group after group of terrifying figures appeared, but all of them chose to stop when they were about to approach the Fate Lotus altar. The reason was very simple. Anyone who charged forward would become the target of all. In that way, they were bound to be expelled or killed at the first possible moment. Such a situation had occurred countless times in the past eras. The scene was deathly silent, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive and murderous. The surroundings of the Fate Lotus altar were densely packed with old fellows, and they were stationed at different positions according to the different camps. Lin Sun's group was here as well. When they appeared, they even instantly became the center of attention. At the same time, Lin Sun saw many familiar faces. For example, Jiang Yinshui's group, Du Feng's group from the Buddhist era, and so on and so forth. Their gazes met, and their hatred collided in the air like invisible ripples. "You're Lin Sun?" Suddenly, Qi Qianji, who held a wine gourd in one hand and the other behind his back, spoke with a smile. "Yes." Lin Sun looked over with an indifferent expression. He'd already found out about Qi Qianji's identity. "All those years ago, I fought with your master, but we were neither enemies nor friends. I have the same attitude towards you." Qi Qianji said, "I only care about who's better, not enmity." "Sure." Lin Sun slightly nodded. "Qi Qianji, when you fought against Sub-Hoodie all those years ago, you were suppressed to the point where you had no choice but to admit defeat in less than 300 exchanges. If you can't beat the disciple of the master of the heart core as well, where will you hide your old face?" Not far away, the sloppy old man, Yi Wuyin, spoke. His eyes were drowsy, and his tone was slow and teasing. Qi Qianji laughed. "People of my generation are already indifferent to fame and disgrace. So what if I lose? If you want to fight, I can play with you." Suddenly, a sweet-sounding voice rang out. Su Wanjun, who was dressed in a red dress and looked as delicate as a young girl, walked over from afar. Her appearance instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. Many of the old monsters were taken aback. "Fellow Taoist Wanjun, I thought you never participated in the competition for the Life Lotus altar?" Qi Qianji couldn't help but feel surprised. "Let me take a look." As Su Wanjun spoke, she stood in the distance. She was alone, but no one dared to underestimate her. The scene suddenly became silent. "Everyone, are we going to follow the old rules for this competition?" Tao Epic's Guan Qianxiu couldn't help but ask. The so-called old rules were that each camp would send out a top figure to compete. The rules were simple, and they would draw lots to determine the winner. The final winner would be able to occupy the Life Lotus altar. The other camps were not allowed to compete for it, or they would become everyone's enemy. This was to avoid too many deaths. In fact, in the past, even if the ownership of the Life Lotus altar was decided according to the old rules, it was still inevitable that there would be deaths. However, as the saying goes, If one was willing to bet, one must be willing to lose. Even if one was killed, one could not violate the tacit rules. Qi said with a smile, "Whether we will follow the old rules or not depends on Lin Sun and his enemies." All eyes were on Lin Sun, as well as Du Feng from the Buddha epoch, Jiang Yinshui from the Gods epoch, and Wang Xinghai from the Witchcraft epoch. Du Feng, Jiang Yinshui, and Wang Xinghai all looked at Lin Sun. The atmosphere suddenly became more and more oppressive. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun glanced around and said, "I don't want to break the rules set by the seniors. If possible, let's follow the old rules and compete." Hearing this, many people breathed a sigh of relief. If Lin Sun wanted to stir up a storm of blood around the Life Lotus altar like he did a few days ago, it would inevitably lead to an unpredictable melee. After all, the relationship between the camps was really complicated. To make a simple analogy, some camps had enmity with Du Feng from the Buddha epoch, while some camps were friends with Du Feng. Under such circumstances, once Lin Sun and Du Feng started fighting, how could those camps that were friends with Du Feng stand idly by? Similarly, how could those who were enemies of Du Feng and the others not join in when they saw such an opportunity? In this way, a melee of a larger scale was bound to break out. Du Feng, Jiang Yinshui, and Wang Xinghai were also well aware of this. It was no exaggeration to say that if Lin Sun and Du Feng really started fighting, most of the old monsters around the Life Lotus altar would be involved. This was called pull one hair and move the whole body. And Lin Sun's answer would undoubtedly prevent all this from happening. Therefore, at this moment, even Du Feng, Wang Xinghai, and Jiang Yinshui heaved a sigh of relief. It was not that they were afraid of fighting with Lin Sun. Rather, they were more concerned about whether they could seize the opportunity to go to the ruins of Tao at this critical juncture of snatching the Life Lotus altar. Then let's follow the old rules. Each camp will send one Taoist friend to participate in the fight. The others can only watch and not interfere, Qi said with a smile. Soon, each camp will send one Taoist friend to participate in the fight. In next to no time, the cultivators from the various camps that would participate in the competition had been chosen. There were 19 people in total. Du Feng and Jiang Yinshui originally came from the 9 palaces Heaven Pass together, but they belonged to different camps, so they each sent one top figure to participate in the fight. And on the side of the 5 Elements Heaven Pass, it was no surprise that Lin Sun would participate. He glanced at the other participants and suddenly understood. The Buddha epic sent Du Feng, the Witch epic sent Wang Xinghai, and Jiang Yinshui's camp sent Jiang Yinshui. Other than that, there were some people that Lin Sun should pay attention to. Qi, Yi Wuyin, and the others were all big shots who stood at the top of the Life Lotus realm. Each of them had an unfathomable foundation, far beyond the likes of true monarch Yellow Dragon. And Su Wanjun, who most of the old monsters were afraid of, did not participate, just as she said. "You can start drawing lots now. There's a blank lot. Whoever draws, it will successfully enter the next round of the fight." Qi waved his sleeve. A ray of mysterious light appeared and transformed in the void, forming a lot pot. Inside the pot were 19 Tao lots formed by the power of the Great Tao. There were 19 participants in this fight. Therefore, other than the blank lot, the other 18 lots were divided into 2 groups, each with the number 1 to 9 engraved on it. Those who drew the same number would be the opponent. Once the Tao lots were formed, no one could do anything to them, not even Qi. This rule had been in effect in the Life Lotus realm for many years. Immediately, people stepped forward and began to draw lots. When it was Lin Sun's turn, he drew a lot with the number 6 on it. His opponent was another person who held a lot with the number 6. The number 6 also meant that the order of the fight was 6. The 2 who drew the lot, please step out. Others, please step back, Qi said loudly. Suddenly, the crowd dispersed, leaving only 2 figures standing in the field. They were Jiang Yinshui and an old monster named Fei Hushin. "Do you want to fight to the death or to decide the winner?" Qi asked. Coincidentally, Jiang Yinshui and Fei Hushin both chose to decide the winner. Fellow practitioner, how about we decide the winner in 3 moves? Fei Husheng said. Dressed in a gray robe, he looked like a young man with a pair of cyan short halberds on his back. He was an old monster who had gone through 5 great desolation tribulations. Okay, Jiang Yinshui nodded. Soon the fight broke out. The 2 old monsters exerted all their means and attacked with all their might. The situation of the battle couldn't be said to be tragic, but it could be said to be hair-raising, because to decide the outcome in 3 moves, no matter if it was Jiang Yinshui or Fei Husheng, both of them had used their trump cards, and the divine abilities they executed were each more terrifying and shocking than the last. After 3 moves, Jiang Yinshui won by a narrow margin. Fei Husheng left the field gloomily. The old monsters in his camp all showed a bitter expression. Fei Husheng's defeat meant that they, who were in the same camp as Fei Husheng, also lost a chance to seize the Life Lotus Taoist altar in this battle. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun suddenly relaxed. At least, Jiang Yinshui was not eliminated in the first round, and he still had a chance to teach him a lesson. Next, the 2 practitioners who drew the lot too, please step forward. Qi Qinji announced. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures appeared in the field. One was solemn, dressed in a white frock and holding a snow-white horsetail whisk. It was Du Feng, the leader of the Buddhist era. The other was an old monster called Yongxing. He himself was a giant figure comparable to Jiang Yinshui and Zhu Tianjun. But when he saw that his opponent was Du Feng, Yongxing frowned and revealed a bitter smile. He shook his head and sighed. There's no need to fight anymore. I admit defeat. If this happened in the 2nd or 3rd round, Yongxing would have the confidence to fight against his opponent. After all, after 1 or 2 battles, no matter how strong Du Feng was, he would have lost some of his combat ability. He might even be heavily injured and be taken advantage of by others. But now, Du Feng at his peak was not someone Yongxing could fight against. Therefore, he admitted defeat without hesitation. The 3rd update was delivered. The Goldfish posted an article on. Everyone can leave a comment to ask questions, criticisms, and suggestions. Tomorrow, the Goldfish will reply to them one by one. Click on to follow and view the article. Chapter 32:26. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun frowned slightly. He had intended to see how powerful Du Feng was, but who would have thought that his opponent would directly admit defeat? I've already asked around. Xin Hu, Lei Song, and the others were able to win in the 4th Life Lotus world thanks to Du Feng and Wang Xinghai's help. Otherwise, with their battle strength, it would have been difficult for them to last until the end. Xingjian Gorge transmitted his voice to Lin Sun. You can help them? Lin Sun was surprised. Of course. It is said that in the 2nd round, Xin Hu met Wang Xinghai, and Wang Xinghai directly admitted defeat. In the 3rd round, Xin Hu met an old monster who was on good terms with Du Feng. With Du Feng's instruction, the old monster also admitted defeat on the spot. In this way, how could Xin Hu not win? There was a trace of disdain in Xingjian Gorge's voice. Of course, the reason why Wang Xinghai and Du Feng did this was because Xin Hu wanted to send 3 practitioners to the ruins of wonderful Tao, namely Ji Tianqing, Yi Wuhan, and Zhichong. 3 extraordinary existences had appeared among the ancestors of these 3 old fellows, and they'd headed to the ruins of Dao many years ago. Even Wang Xinghai and Du Feng had to do them a favor. Lin Sun finally understood. While they were talking, the 3rd battle had been carried out on the battlefield. Lin Sun's eyes were also attracted by it. As a bystander, even Lin Sun had to admit that these characters that were chosen to participate in the competition could be said to be the best in the Boundless Realm. They possessed terrifying resources, formidable combat strength, and possessed numerous supreme divine abilities. When they fought, they were far from what ordinary people could compare to. Watching these battles was also an eye-opener for Lin Sun. The 3rd battle soon came to an end, and the winner was Guan Qinxiu of the Dao era. As time went on, the 4th and 5th battles also came to an end. The winners were Wang Xinghai and Qi Qinji, respectively. Next, the 2 practitioners who drew the 6, please come out. Qi Qinji's voice sounded. Whoosh, whoosh. two figures appeared in the field. When the audience saw the identity of the two figures, there was an uproar, because one was Lin Sun and the other was Yi Wuyin. The former shone brilliantly in the world of the life lotus this time, and he slaughtered until the world was shaken. The latter was an existence that had overcome 7 grand silence lifespan tribulations, and he could be said to be one of the top figures amongst all the old fellows present here. Yet, these two people had met in the first round. How could this not be shocking? Interesting. Qianji laughed. According to the old rules, this is how the competition is. It's not just the top characters that have the upper hand. It's possible that they'll be eliminated in the first round. That's fair. The eyes of the other old monsters present flickered. For them, whether they eliminated Lin Sun or Yi Wuyin, it was a good thing for other participants. Even if someone emerged victorious in this battle, how could it be possible that they would suffer a small amount of damage? This was an opportunity for the others. You're just here to watch a good show. Yi Wuyin glanced at Qianji unhappily. Then, he looked at Lin Sun and said, "Little friend, if you and I fight with all our strength, even if one of us wins, the other will be hurt. What do you think?" Lin Sun nodded calmly. "It should be so. In that case, why don't you and I change the way of competition?" Yi Wuyin suggested. "For example, we can compete with each other in terms of the great Tao powers that we control." Lin Sun was stunned. How to play chess? The others also showed curiosity. Yi Wuyin waved his sleeve, and a chessboard appeared in front of him. "This is my chessboard of spring and autumn. It contains the ups and downs of worldly affairs and all living beings. It's comparable to a vast world of rise and fall. No matter what kind of power you choose to play, one person will set up the game and the other will break it. What do you think?" Now, Lin Sun was also interested and said, "Can I have a look at this chessboard first?" "Why not?" Yi Wuyin smiled and handed the chessboard of spring and autumn to Lin Sun. Holding it in his hand, as soon as Lin Sun's spiritual awareness entered it, a vast and prosperous world emerged in his mind. In this world, the ups and downs of worldly affairs, the alternation of phenomena, the rotation of seasons, and hundreds of millions of creatures lived in it, showing the joys and sorrows of life. What surprised Lin Sun most was that the hundreds of millions of creatures in it were all real living beings. Now, such a world and hundreds of millions of lives were all integrated into this chessboard of spring and autumn, which shocked Lin Sun. Holding this chessboard in his hand, didn't it mean that all living beings living in the world of the chessboard were like chess pieces at the mercy of Yi Wuyin? And for the hundreds of millions of living beings in the world of the chessboard, Yi Wuyin's existence was undoubtedly the master of heaven. Don't worry too much, my young friend. Although the world in this chessboard is controlled by me, all living beings in the world of the chessboard have their own destinies. I can't meddle with them. Otherwise, I will be affected by karma and be implicated. Not far away, Yi Wuyin said, "The reason why I refine this treasure is nothing more than to observe the lives of all living beings at all times. I want to see where the fate of all living beings will go under the change of worldly affairs and the rotation of time." Hearing this, Lin Sun understood and said, "Senior, may I ask how to make a layout and break the game on this chessboard?" Yi Wuyin said, "It's very simple. Replace the rules of heaven and earth of this chessboard with our power of the Great Way. Whoever can dominate this world will be the winner." Lin Sun was stunned and looked a little strange. He said, "Only the power of the Great Way?" Yi Wuyin said with a smile, "Yes, I do this because I want to see how powerful the power of nirvana that your master has been waiting for is." The old monsters nearby couldn't help showing interest. Nirvana? Who didn't know that the master of the square inch once said that such a power was enough to overturn everything in the past? However, there were very few people who had really seen such a power. "Okay," Lin Sun agreed. Yi Wuyin said, "The rules of heaven and earth in this chessboard world are transformed by my power of the Great Way. They represent all my knowledge and control of the Great Way. You can try to break the game. Of course, I can also take back my power. You can make the layout, and I will break the game." Lin Sun shook his head. "There's no need to be so troublesome. I will break the game." With that, Lin Sun took a deep breath and ran his power of the Great Way into the chessboard of spring and autumn. Suddenly, Lin Sun sensed all kinds of wonderful scenes. In the chessboard world, in a bustling city, the streets were bustling with pedestrians and carriages, but they were all ordinary people. This was only a corner of the chessboard world, but the joys and sorrows of the human world, birth, aging, sickness, and death, and all kinds of human beings were vividly displayed here. Lin Sun suddenly felt that he had incarnated into a beggar on the street. His clothes were ragged, and he was skinny and dying. There was not even a trace of power or cultivation in his body. He couldn't even sense any aura of the Great Way between heaven and earth at all. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Was the Great Way that Yi Wuyin pursued based on the characteristics of all living beings? If so, did it mean that from the moment he became a beggar on the street, he had already entered the rules of heaven and earth controlled by him? Interesting. Lin Sun turned over and stood up. It was a simple movement, but it seemed so laborious. The reason was that his physical condition at the moment was too poor. He was dirty all over, unkempt, and hungry. He was afraid that he wouldn't live long. However, Lin Sun didn't panic. He had already realized that the struggle for the Great Way had begun from this moment. Hey, when did there become so many beggars at the door? Go away quickly. Don't disturb the business of our restaurant. A waiter came out of the restaurant and stared at Lin Sun fiercely with a look of disgust. Lin Sun glanced at the waiter and knew that he was a living person and was not controlled by Yi Wuyin. The reason was very simple. He was an eyesore and blocked the door of the restaurant, so he was driven away by the waiter. This was cause and effect. Lin Sun thought about it and was about to say something. Suddenly, there was a burst of rapid sound of horse hooves coming from afar. A group of Jianghu heroes riding on fine horses came from afar, barging and crashing along the way, making the street extremely chaotic. There were shadows dodging and screams everywhere. Get out of the way! Get out of the way! The shouts kept echoing, and the sound of horse hooves was getting closer and closer. For Lin Sun, if he didn't dodge quickly, he was doomed to be trampled by the hooves of those horses in his current position. And if he were to be stepped on, with his current physical condition, he would probably die. Lin Sun said without hesitation, "Waiter, your 80-year-old mother is seriously ill in bed. You can't cure her with your current monthly salary. Help me up, and I will help your mother." The waiter was stunned and surprised. "How do you know my mother is seriously ill? If you don't save me, I will be trampled to death. You won't know anything at that time. If you save me, maybe you can save your mother's life. Hurry up," Lin Sun said quickly. The waiter didn't dare to hesitate. He directly stepped forward and dragged Lin Sun's bony body to the side of the restaurant. Boom! The group of Jianghu heroes galloped past on horses. They were only a breath away from trampling Lin Sun, a beggar on the street. It was extremely dangerous. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He smiled and murmured, "This kind of struggle is really interesting." At the same time, near the Life Lotus Taoist altar, Yi Wuyin noticed what was happening in the world of the spring and autumn chessboard and laughed. "My young friend Lin, even I don't dare to get involved in the karma of all living beings. You seem to have resolved the danger by doing this, but you have also fallen into the shackles of karma." Since Yi Wuyin didn't hide anything, the old monsters nearby also noticed what was happening in the world of the chessboard and had different expressions on their faces. Du Feng, who was not far away, said with a sad expression, "Taoist brother used the karma of all living beings as a game. Even if Lin Sun broke it in the end, he would still get involved in the karma and lose. This is undoubtedly an almost unsolvable deadlock." Chapter 32:27. Du Feng's words caused displeasure in the traversing Sword Gorge. An unsolvable deadlock? Ever since little friend Lin entered the world of the Life Lotus, haven't you encountered enough deadlocks? But now, which of those old fellows who went against little friend Lin have a good ending? Du Feng smiled and didn't say anything. It was a gesture of being too lazy to argue. Qi Qianji, who was not far away, asked, "If little friend Lin didn't choose to let the waiter help, what would have happened next?" Yi Wuyin said, "Then he would have fallen into death and rebirth again and again. He would have become everyone in this world." Every death is equivalent to a setback under my great Tao. In the end, he would have been completely lost in the myriad forms and could only admit defeat. So, his previous choice was correct? Chi Qinji raised an eyebrow. Not really, Iwuin said. That waiter saved him once, which was equivalent to binding his own karma to little friend Lin. This way, no matter what little friend Lin does, or even if he doesn't do anything, he would still fall into a situation where he has no control over himself. He would be like duckweed in a river, only able to go with the flow. Moreover, during this entire process, the karma that is bound to him will increase as well. Everyone knows that when there is too much karma involved, it is too difficult to break free. Speaking of this, Iwuin said, I have already reminded little friend Lin that although I control this chessboard world, I don't dare to touch the karma of all living beings. But he didn't seem to take it to heart. Qinji frowned. He can't advance, nor can he retreat. This is clearly a deadlock. The other old monsters also reacted with different expressions. Iwuin was one of the top boundless realm existences among them. His Tao path was the manifestation of all living beings, which involved the power of karma and fate. If fate was compared to the supreme Tao of taboo, then the power of manifestation of all living beings that Iwuin controlled was similar to the great Tao of fate. Haha, I have no ill intentions. And after experiencing this battle, even if little friend Lin loses, there is no harm to little friend Lin. Iwuin smiled. He won't lose. Su Wanjun, who had been looking on coldly, suddenly said, although your manifestation of all beings is the best in the world, it's still a little worse than the great way Lin Sun has mastered. Her words at this moment shocked everyone present. They seemed to have never expected that Su Wanjun, the she-devil, would think so highly of Lin Sun. Fellow Taoist Wanjun, do you think that the power of nirvana can break this deadlock? Iwuin narrowed his eyes. He could ignore the words of others, but he could not ignore Su Wanjun's words. Su Wanjun said, just continue watching. Old beggar, do you really have a way to cure my mother? At the entrance of the restaurant, the waiter was skeptical. Even the manager of the restaurant didn't know that his mother was seriously ill, but the beggar had just revealed it. If my guess is correct, you've already spent a lot of money to invite many doctors to treat your mother, but they all said that your mother is terminally ill and can't be saved, right? Lin sat up with difficulty, leaned his back against the outer wall of the restaurant, and then exhaled a long breath. Yes, that's right. The waiter was so excited that he even changed the way he addressed Lin Sun. Old sir, you really have a divine foresight. You're like an immortal. Lin Sun laughed. Have you ever seen an immortal? The waiter said embarrassedly, how is that possible? How is that possible? This is all nonsense. Who doesn't know that the gods and monsters in this world are all fake? He didn't know that there might be no immortals and monsters in this world, but the old beggar in front of him was more powerful than immortals and monsters. If you want me to help save your mother, I can, but let me fill my stomach first. Lin Sun said. Okay, wait for a moment. The waiter slipped into the restaurant like a wisp of smoke. Lin Sun leaned against the wall and looked at the bustling crowd on the street. His eyes gradually turned to the sky in the distance, and he sighed with emotion in his heart. It's really a big deal to use the karma of all living beings as a trap. In the past, I might only be able to break it by force, but now, I'd like to feel how many mysteries are hidden in the fetters of karma and fate. Not long after, the waiter came out with 2 caddies of beef and a pot of old wine. Oh, I'm sorry to let you spend a lot of money. Lin Sun joked with a smile. The waiter said, as long as you can cure my mother, I'll support you for the rest of my life. Your filial piety is commendable. Lin Sun praised and then picked up the wine, meat and aged wine to enjoy. After eating and drinking, Lin Sun said, prepare hot water for me. I want to wash. By the way, if you have clothes, you can also prepare a set for me. The waiter was stunned. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun would make a request. After hesitating for a moment, he whispered, old sir, how about coming to my house with me to wash in the evening? I'm afraid I can't wait. Lin Sun shook his head. The waiter gritted his teeth and said, old sir, please come with me. As he said, he squatted down, carried Lin's son on his back, and walked into the restaurant. Inevitably, he was scolded by the manager. The waiter explained with a smile. Under the murderous gaze of the manager, he took Lin's son into the woodshed in the backyard. Then he began to chop firewood and boil water. When Lin's son began to take a bath, the waiter hurriedly fetched a clean coarse cloth. After washing, Lin's son put on clean clothes and felt much more refreshed. Looking at the waiter on one side, Lin's son found that he was already anxious. Today, because of me, you offended the manager and prepared meat and wine for me out of your own pocket. Don't you worry? Lin's son asked with a smile. Yes. The waiter gritted his teeth and said, but as long as my mother can be cured, it's nothing. Lin's son nodded. The cause and effect are caused by you. I will repay you. As he said, he asked the waiter to prepare a pen and ink. Soon, he wrote a prescription and handed it over. Take this prescription to buy the medicine and then go to save your mother. If there is no accident, your mother will be completely cured in 3 days. The waiter bowed again and again with excitement. Thank you, old sir. Thank you. Lin's son smiled and was about to walk out of the restaurant with the waiter. Suddenly, he noticed the unkind eyes of the manager on one side. Lin's son immediately stopped and said, Manager, in less than 2 hours, you will be in big trouble. The manager was stunned at first and then flew into a rage. Old thing, how dare you curse me? Who asked you to secretly go to Blacksmith Wong's house next door to have an affair last night? Unfortunately, some clues have been exposed. In 2 hours, Blacksmith Wong will come to settle accounts with you. After saying that, Lin's son walked out of the restaurant with a smile. But his words were heard by many diners in the restaurant, and they all laughed. Old Wong's wife from next door is such a rascal. How could you eat her? Tut tut, I didn't expect that. Manager, do you think you can satisfy Wong's wife's appetite with your weak body? A group of diners ridiculed him, but the manager's face was already pale and he was out of his wits. How could the old beggar know such a thing? Sure enough, in less than 2 hours, a strong and fierce-looking man rushed in and beat the manager violently, making him cry for his father and mother and wail again and again. At first, those diners were still watching the fun, but gradually they realized that something was wrong. The old beggar not only knew that the manager was having an affair, but also calculated the time when Blacksmith Wong would come for revenge. This was incredible. How could he predict the future? The old beggar is still outside the restaurant. Let's go and have a look. Some diners got up and hurried to find him. Old sir, may I ask how you calculated what would happen to the manager before? A white-robed man asked politely, cupping his hands. Lin's son squatted lazily in the corner, squinting in the sun, and said, My friend, half a month ago, you stole a batch of silk cloth from a rich merchant in this city. If I'm right, 10 days later, you will be destroyed. The white-robed man's face changed as if he was struck by lightning. He said angrily, Old thing, don't slander me. Lin's son said, Whoever helps me drive this man away, I'll help him see whether his future is good or bad. Suddenly, the onlookers nearby were boiling. After seeing all kinds of magical means of Lin's son before, how could they not understand that they met a master? The white-robed man noticed the unkind eyes around him. He immediately gave up threatening Lin's son and left in a hurry. Old sir, can you help me predict my marriage? A young man couldn't help asking. I can pay. Lin's son glanced at him and said, Your marriage is not in this city. If you listen to me and set off immediately to chase after your sad cousin, this marriage may be successful. The young man was shocked. You know what happened between me and my cousin? Lin's son smiled and said nothing. Old sir, if I can stay with my cousin for a long time, I will invite you to our wedding. The young man took a deep breath, bowed, and then put the money bag at his waist beside Lin's son respectfully. Then he left in a hurry. As soon as he left, people nearby swarmed up and scrambled to ask questions. Old sir, can you predict when I will be successful? Old sir, I will take part in the imperial examination next year. I wonder if you can predict my future? Seeing this, Lin's son couldn't help laughing. He answered them one by one without any refusal. In the following time, the commotion caused by Lin Sun became more and more great, attracting many people to gather around. And Lin Sun became a master, like a god in everyone's eyes. In front of the Life Lotus Taoist altar, Yi Wuyin's expression changed constantly. Didn't Lin Sun know that doing this would involve more and more karma? In the end, he would be trapped completely? Qi Qianji couldn't help but say, "Why do I feel that Lin Sun's action is a hopeless case?" Other old monsters were also surprised and doubtful. They didn't understand what Lin Sun wanted to do. Du Feng suddenly wrinkled his snow-white eyebrows and said, "If you don't go to hell, you don't know what hell looks like. Is Lin Sun going to put himself in a hopeless situation and then come back to life?" Chapter 32:28. The setting sun shone in the evening. In front of the restaurant, there was a long queue with no end in sight. People were talking about it everywhere in the street. "That old man is really amazing. It is said that he knows astronomy and geography and can see through people's past and future at a glance. Is he really an immortal? None of us have seen what an immortal looks like, but this old man must be like an immortal." Suddenly, when it was the turn of a burly man, he said bluntly, "Old man, I just want to ask if there's a way to live forever in this world." Lin Sun looked up at the man and said, "You galloped wildly on this street today, didn't you?" The burly man was stunned and said, "Yes, I was in a hurry to meet an important guest, so I had to gallop on the busy street. In the future, maybe everyone in this world can learn the way to live forever, but you can't," Lin Sun said casually. The burly man frowned. "Why?" "Because you almost killed me," Lin Sun said, and stood up with a smile. He looked at the street under the setting sun and the long line of figures, and couldn't help but show a thoughtful expression. In the eyes of others, these mortal scenes were ordinary, but in his eyes he saw countless strands of light that were intertwined and intertwined like threads. They were mixed in the void of the heavens and the earth, and they were changing at all times. Those were the karma lines, which deduce the appearance of all living beings in this world, including birth, aging, illness, death, sorrow and joy, separation and reunion, all originated from them. However, with Lin Sun's arrival and his constant divination for people here, the karma of these living beings was undergoing drastic changes. It was even to the extent that he was able to notice strands of the energy of karma that grew darker and darker in color on his body, and it seemed like a dense mass of shackles and shackles. "Well, have I ever done this?" The burly man frowned, and there was a touch of killing intent in his eyes. "Old man, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want." Lin Sun suddenly reached out and pointed between his eyebrows. "Good and evil will be rewarded, and the karma goes round. Others dare not get involved in this world, but it doesn't mean that I dare not." The burly man's body was stiff at first, and then he lay straight on the ground and gradually lost his breath. When the people nearby saw this, they cried out in alarm and retreated, and the scene instantly became chaotic. Lin Sun smiled and put his hands behind his back. Then, under countless horrified gazes, his figure rose up from the void. "God! God!" Someone cried out in fear and fell to his knees. Heavens! Is that old man really an immortal? On the streets, everyone raised their heads in unison and looked at the figure that was soaring in the sky with a dazed expression. Gradually, Lin Sun's figure rose higher and higher until he reached beyond the clouds. He looked down at the world and had a panoramic view of all living beings in the chessboard world. Between heaven and earth, the seething power of karma was changing like a raging sea. Lin Sun looked at himself, and with a twist of his hand, he pulled out the first karma line. This was the karma force that belonged to the waiter. As Lin Sun shook his hand gently, this line of cause and effect suddenly swayed, constantly contacting and entangling with the surrounding lines of cause and effect. Gradually, more and more lines of cause and effect were involved by this line, and the coverage was getting wider and wider. In the end, the karma force of the whole world swayed and drifted with it. Looking from a distance, it was like an immortal holding a waterfall and dancing in the Milky Way. Suddenly, Lin Sun's clothes fluttered and he said softly, How can the karma of all living beings be confined in the chessboard forever? Today I, Lin Sun, will overturn this chessboard and give all living beings a chance to jump out of the shackles of karma. Boom! All the karma force in the world was grasped by him and put into his palm in an instant. Then, Lin Sun turned into a rain of light, shrouding the chessboard world. In a final analysis, the old beggar he turned into at this moment was his power of the Great Way. Now, with the removal of all the karma in the world, his power of the Great Way also replaced the rules of the whole world. Bang! In front of the Life Lotus Taoist altar, the chessboard of spring and autumn in Lin Sun's hand suddenly produced a muffled sound, breaking the silent atmosphere in the field. At this time, Lin Sun withdrew his spiritual awareness and glanced around. He saw that all the old monsters nearby had a touch of surprise between their eyebrows. Looking at Yi Wuyin not far away, he was absent-minded and silent, as if he had suffered a great blow. After a while, Yi Wuyin came to his senses and stared at Lin Sun, saying, "It seems that what you used before was not the power of nirvana, but the power of fate." Lin Sun cupped his hands and handed the chessboard back to him. "Thank you for letting me win." Yi Wuyin took the chessboard of spring and autumn and looked at the completely different rules of heaven and earth in the chessboard world. He couldn't help shaking his head with a wry smile. Breaking karma with fate. If I had known that you had mastered such a power, I wouldn't have made a fool of myself like this. Alas, I lost. Fate was known as the supreme taboo. Karma, fate, the cycle of life and death were all small branches of fate. Yi Wuyin now understood that Lin Sun had mastered this power, which was equivalent to suppressing the power of karma of all living beings. Therefore, the karma of all living beings in the chessboard world could not have any shackles on Lin Sun at all, and he had used this as a game to compete with Lin Sun before. What was the difference between that and making a fool of himself? Fate. Is there really someone in this world who can comprehend this kind of rule? At the same time, those old monsters nearby couldn't calm down and looked at Lin Sun with a strange look in their eyes. As for enemies like Du Feng, Jiang Yinshui, and Wang Xinghai, their expressions were uncertain. This game seemed to be ordinary, but when the winner was finally decided, they suddenly found that Lin Sun had another hidden card. Fate. Xingjian Gorge and the others were relieved and laughed. Only they knew that Lin Sun was not the only one who had mastered the power of fate. It's not surprising that he used fate to suppress karma. Not far away, Su Wanjun murmured in her heart. After all, this is the supreme taboo power in the world. After so many eras, there are only a few people who can master it. Next, the one who drew the 7 sign will come out. There was no doubt that Yi Wuyin had lost. Without any delay, Qi Qinji announced the next battle. 10 minutes later, when all 9 battles were over, people found that the one who drew the blank sign was Tian Xingzi, a terrifying figure who could keep pace with the top figures like Du Feng and Wang Xinghai. So far, the 10 winners had appeared. They were Du Feng, Wang Xinghai, Jiang Shanshui, Tian Xingzi, Qi Qinji, Lin Sun, Baya, Feng Yao, Fa Wuxiang, and Shui Sun. Those who had been eliminated in their camps were doomed to have no chance to compete for the Life Lotus Taoist altar. In this regard, some people were disappointed, some were calm, and some shook their heads and sighed. Now, let's draw lots for the second round. Qi Qinji said and condensed the lot pot again. This time, the lots were engraved with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Hexen, Ren, and Gue. Those who drew Jia Gue, Bing Run, Ding Xin, and Wuji were competitors. At the same time, this was the order of the battles. This time, Lin Sun drew the first lot and would be the first one to fight. Now, let's start the first battle. Qi Qinji said loudly. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures appeared in the field. When he saw his opponent, Lin Sun smiled. Jiang Shanshui. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. When Jiang Shanshui saw his opponent, his face turned green as if he had been struck by lightning. This time, I choose the life and death duel, Lin Sun said without hesitation. The whole field was silent, and everyone's expression became subtle. Jiang Shanshui's old face turned blue, and he was speechless. Because according to the old rules, if one party decided to fight to the death, the other party could only agree and could not back down or refuse. This kind of thing had happened many times in the past. At this moment, Du Feng of the Buddha era said in a deep voice, "Taoism Pure Lin, why do you have to be so ruthless? Even your master didn't think that you would be so ruthless." It would have been better if Du Feng hadn't mentioned it. Now that it was mentioned, Lin Sun couldn't restrain his anger. He said calmly, "In my opinion, it's because my master was too kind that some old bastards returned kindness with ingratitude. They couldn't beat my master, so they vented their resentment on me, their apprentice. How shameless they are." These words made the old guys who were enemies of Lin Sun in the field look a little ugly. "I won't imitate the kindness of my master. If I let those old bastards live on, I'm afraid that my friends and relatives will suffer the same revenge when they come here in the future." Lin Sun's voice was calm but powerful. "In short, this kind of thing should end with me." The whole field was silent, and the mood of the old monsters changed. Du Feng frowned and said no more. "Do you really think I'm at your mercy?" Suddenly, Jiang Shanshui shouted, and with a resolute look, he attacked with all his strength. He knew that there was no way out, so he decided to fight with all his might. As a giant, Jiang Shanshui's combat power was naturally extremely strong, only a little weaker than the top figures, such as Du Feng and Wang Xinghai. When such a figure fought with all his might, no one dared to underestimate him. Lin Sun didn't underestimate him either. He used all his strength to fight head-on. The battle was so fierce that it affected the hearts of everyone present. However, just a moment later, Jiang Shanshui couldn't hold on any longer and was in a precarious situation. In less than a quarter of an hour, Jiang Shanshui was completely defeated. His Taoist body was directly killed by Lin Sun on the spot, along with his spirit. When witnessing this scene of death, there was a dead silence. Not a single sound could be heard. All the old monsters were silent, their hearts surging. This battle let them witness with their own eyes how powerful Lin Sun's combat power was. He could even compete with top figures such as Qi Qianji, Su Wanjun, and Du Feng. The death of Jiang Shanshui was also a big blow to those enemies of Lin Sun. In particular, when they learned that Lin Sun had made up his mind to settle the score, they all had a hunch that even if the battle in the world of Life Lotus ended this time, Lin Sun would not let it go in the future. More updates. Chapter 32-29. The price Lin Sun paid for killing Jiang Yuanshui was light injuries and about 30% of his physical strength. It wasn't serious, but it was still slightly worse than when he was at his peak. Fortunately, he was the first to fight in the second round, so he still had time to heal his injuries and recover his cultivation. The second round was between Du Feng and Dao, Lord Windy Yao. It was also this battle that allowed Lin Sun to witness the true strength of Du Feng, the leader of the Buddhist era. He had survived 7 great silence lifespan tribulations and mastered the heavenly rule. Fighting with him was like fighting against the boundless heavenly Tao, giving off an unshakable and untouchable feeling. Tao Lord Windy Yao was a terrifying existence comparable to true monarch Yellow Dragon, but he was clearly at a disadvantage when fighting against Du Feng. The battle only lasted for 10 minutes before Tao Lord Windy Yao shook his head helplessly and admitted defeat. Lin Sun thought to himself that if he were Du Feng, he would have to pay a heavy price in order to take down this old guy. The third round was between Qi Qianji and Tian Xingzi. This was the most intense battle since the start of the competition. Both Qi Qianji and Tian Xingzi were top-notch bigwigs in the world of the Life Lotus. Qi Qianji mastered the indefinite rule. War was unpredictable, and battles were unpredictable. With a wave of his hand, he could create all sorts of deadly tribulations and snatch all fortunes. Tian Xingzi, on the other hand, mastered the extreme yang rule. His skills were broad and domineering, and he had the unparalleled elegance of breaking all laws with his strength. The battle between the two bigwigs attracted the attention of the audience. Even Lin Sun was dazzled and his mind was in a whirl. From these two big shots, he saw two completely different supreme paths of the Tao. The rules they mastered were integrated with all sorts of profound Taoists. Even the power of their skills had the unparalleled power of all laws return to one, all laws develop. Evidently, Lin Sun wasn't the only one who knew of integrate all laws into one. Those old guys who had stepped into the boundless realm all had such attainments in their respective Taoists. Now, the competition was based on the strength of their respective Taoists. This was the so-called Tao competition. Old fart, none of us will gain anything if this goes on. Why don't you give me a chance? Qinji shouted. Why don't you give in to me once? Tian Xingzi snorted coldly. Both of them knew that it would be extremely difficult to determine the victor between them in a short period of time. However, the longer this battle continued, the greater the consumption of their energy. In the end, even if someone won, that person's cultivation would definitely be severely exhausted, and that person would suffer a huge loss in the next round of the competition. However, neither of them wanted to admit defeat, and neither of them intended to back down. As a result, the following battle became even more intense. Almost an hour later, Qi Qianji, who was already panting from exhaustion, said, I'm done. Nothing good ever happens when I meet you. As he spoke, he took the initiative to leave the battlefield. It's my turn to win this time. Tian Xingzi smiled proudly. If I'm not wrong, you only have less than 30% of your strength remaining. It's already not easy for you to recover half of your strength before the next round of the competition begins. At that time, let me see who will benefit greatly from this. Qi Qianji directly exposed Tian Xingzi's secret, which made the latter's smile stagnate and his face turn black. This was tantamount to telling others that Tian Xingzi was already an arrow at the end of its flight. You old fart, you're still as sinister and evil as before. Tian Xingzi cursed and sat cross-legged on the ground, seizing the time to recover his strength. Seeing this, Lin Sun smiled in his heart. How could he not see that Qi Qianji and Tian Xingzi were actually a pair of close friends who seemed to be at odds with each other? In the fourth round, Wang Xinghai fought against Divine Lord Baiya. The winner would be decided in 3 moves. Unexpectedly, Wang Xinghai lost in the end. This made Lin Sun frown. He could see that Wang Xinghai had reserved his strength. Otherwise, he might not be able to win in 3 moves, but he could at least be on par with Wang Xinghai. Old weirdo Wang, why did you suddenly lose this time? Divine Lord Baiya also noticed and said unhappily, Let me tell you, I don't appreciate this favor. Wang Xinghai said expressionlessly, Who asked you to appreciate it? Old weirdo Wang is worried about meeting Lin Sun in the next round, right? Not far away, Qi Qianji laughed. Wang Xinghai snorted coldly, as if he was too lazy to explain. But in the eyes of the crowd, Wang Xinghai's action was very likely just as Qi Qianji had guessed. He did not want to meet Lin Sun in the next round. As for whether it was because of fear or other reasons, no one knew. In the 5th round, Fa Wuxiang was against Taoist Xue Sun. Both of them chose to determine the winner by deducing great ways. Whoever deduced the power of the great Tao within a quarter of an hour would be the winner. This was a test of their control of great ways. It was not very intense, but it attracted everyone's attention, because this kind of competition could directly show the attainments of great ways of the 2 old weirdos. In the end, Fa Wuxiang won by a little. When he witnessed the entire process of the battle, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel admiration in his heart. These old fellows had lived for numerous eras, and their understanding and grasp of the Grand Tao had simply arrived at an unimaginable state. So, he was deeply enlightened as he watched the battle. Of course, Lin Sun was not afraid if it was a real battle. With that, the second round of 5 battles came to an end. The victors were Lin Sun, Du Feng, Tian Xingzi, Baiya Divine Lord, and Fa Wuxiang. 5 people. Then, we will have to use the 5 elements formula to wear them down. Qi Qianji raised his brows and said, The so-called 5 elements formula was to wear them down according to the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and metal. There were 5 rounds of battles. In other words, each person had to fight 2 battles. According to the final outcome, the following battles would be decided. Forget it, I will not participate in this battle. Suddenly, Tian Xingzi spoke. He took the initiative to give up, surprising everyone. If you knew this would happen, why did you lose to me back then? Qi Qinji said unhappily. I had no choice. I just wanted to beat you. Tian Xingzi said with a chuckle. All right, the following battles will be simple. For people will fight each other. The 2 who win will fight again, and the final winner will be decided. After Qi Qinji said that, he began drawing lots. Soon, the matchups appeared. They were Lin Sun against Bai Yi Divine Lord, and Du Feng against Fa Wuxiang. With that, all the old monsters present were invigorated. That was because the 4 of them could be said to be the top existences in the Life Lotus world. Although Lin Sun was too young, having only reached the boundless realm a few decades ago, his combat strength was in no way inferior to the other 3 old monsters. In other words, in the eyes of all the old monsters, Lin Sun was already on par with the other 3. The first battle was between Lin Sun and Bai Yi Divine Lord. Young friend, there is no room for mercy in a battle of the great Tao. Even though I am very impressed by your master, I will not hold back in this battle. I hope you understand, Bai Yi Divine Lord said calmly. He was dressed in a black robe, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. He had a handsome face and a pair of narrow, bright eyes. His entire body emitted an unbridled aura. Lin Sun nodded slightly. It's only right. Previously, he had watched the battle between Bai Yi Divine Lord and Wang Xinghai. Although it was decided in 3 moves, Bai Yi Divine Lord's might had left a deep impression on him. Bai Yi Divine Lord grasped the incineration law. Its power was extremely domineering, and its destructive aura was astounding. It was said to be able to incinerate all Tao into ashes. Please. Bai Yi Divine Lord raised his hand and beckoned as a crimson halberd appeared in his hand. The halberd's name was Calamity Flame. It weighed 190,000 caddies and represented the number of years Bai Yi Divine Lord had cultivated all the way to the boundless realm. This treasure was also his intrinsic weapon. Outside the battlefield, everyone revealed a solemn look. After the previous battle of the Great Tao, be it Lin Sun or Bai Yi Divine Lord, they did not suffer much. In other words, they were in peak condition. Once such a battle broke out, it would undoubtedly be more intense. Wang, the abyssal sword cauldron appeared and floated above Lin Sun's head. Following that, the 5 Tao bodies appeared out of thin air and surrounded Lin Sun. Upon seeing this scene, everyone outside the battlefield could not help but reveal a look of surprise. They already knew that each of Lin Sun's avatars had combat strength that was in no way weaker than his main body. However, they had no idea how Lin Sun had tempered his avatars to such an extent. This was because anyone who had reached the boundless realm would fuse all their strength into one. Just like the various great Tao, divine powers, and avatars they had grasped, they would all fuse into one. Only by doing so could they break through to the extreme, forcefully withstanding the great desolation, lifeless calamity's onslaught, and step into the boundless realm. However, it was clear that Lin Sun's Tao path was different. Who would have thought that Lin Sun could miraculously reach the boundless realm in the sea of destiny, where the great desolation, lifeless calamity could not appear? Perhaps this was the lotus that the master of the heart core had been waiting for. It was precisely because it could not be measured by common sense that it could overturn everything and shatter all common sense. Boom! Without further ado, Sir Bai Yi made his move. With a slash of the calamity flame halberd in his hand, heavenly fire descended from the sky, turning everything into ashes. The vast and mighty destructive aura of calamity transformed into the power of doomsday that swept across the sky. If such a power were to occur in the outside world, it could instantly incinerate a large world and refine everything into ashes. At this moment, the nearby old monsters had already distanced themselves from it. Lin Sun did not dodge. Instead, his main body and the 5 Tao forms charged forward. With a loud boom, the abyssal sword cauldron soared into the sky, sprinkling down billions of rays of light that rumbled down. Suddenly, a great battle broke out. In an instant, it had entered the most intense battle. The old monsters could not help but be moved. Their expressions were uncertain. Previously, they had only speculated that Lin Sun's combat strength was comparable to the top existences. Now, when they saw that he could fight evenly with Sir Baya, it further verified their speculations. At this point, there was no doubt. When they thought of how Lin Sun had risen in this era and reached the boundless realm in the Life Lotus world previously, how could the old monsters remain calm when they thought of how he had such heaven-defying combat strength?